those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain.
We live in a time of huge amounts of disinformation and fear being spread online and in so-called news channels. And I think the public need to be able to go back to the BBC and know that that's a touchstone of reliable journalism.
Politicians in America have taken the first step towards ending a 40-day government shutdown. Workers have gone without pay and millions of people have had their food assistance
huge crisis with limited
Almost 300,000 families across England are now experiencing the worst
There is a
forms
very,
of
very
homelessness.
clear process
Crisis says that
giving people
includes
proper
sleeping
health
rough on the
checks,
streets,
life-saving care that they need,
World
and
leaders
then
are in
working
Brazil
out where
for
it
the
is exactly
start
that they've
of
come from.
COP30
Their message to the
Summit.
UK
Circus
is that
farmers among
you
those calling
are
for
fueling
more action to
this
tackle
problem.
climate change.
You are effectively
A court in France will decide later whether to release former President Nicolas Sarkozy from prison only 20 days after he was jailed.
What do you think happens
The 70-year-old was handed a 5-year sentence for criminal conspiracy to finance his 2007 election campaigns with funds from Libya. He's always maintained his innocence. And in sport, Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola believes he and his players have got their energy back this season, following a 3-0 win at home to Premier League champions Liverpool.
It would have been an example, otherwise it would win.
Desert.
And why understand the players? Why 1 or 2 players don't have to run and 8, 9 players have to run? Why these 9 players have to run for 1 or 2 players don't run? No, in that team everyone has to
that
get
means
incredible.
bodies
with the ball,
in the desert. The Libyan
Bournemouth were
authorities
thrashed
are having to
4-0 at Aston Villa. That's the latest. I'm
in the
Nisha
desert.
McCanna.
The UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again,
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning to you. It is Monday the 10th of November, and I woke up this morning and I thought, you know what? It's absolutely hacking it down with rain across the United Kingdom. The wind is blowing. It's awful, isn't it? Autumn is coming, and yet I bounced out of bed with the biggest grin on my face ever because, ladies and gentlemen, the BBC are in turmoil. And I don't mean to sound smug, but really, let me just read this. Right? We know overnight that Donald Trump has slammed the outgoing BBC Director General Tim Davie. He resigned last night over the corporation's deceptive editing of that speech of Donald Trump from 4 years ago. We'll play that in just a clip. But this isn't just the only thing. On Tim Davie's watch, think about it, you've had Hugh Edwards. I'm not going to get into trouble for saying this. A paedophile who's still walking the streets and we're paying for his pension. Gary Lineker, £1.5 million a year to spout even pro-Gaza stuff. Greg Wallish. Bob Villan, who's allowed to stand on stage in Glastonbury saying, you know, deaf to the IDF, blatantly anti-Semitic. Martine Croxall, of course, the newsreader. We love Martine Croxall. She had on her auto cue pregnant people. She dared to change it to pregnant women and got absolutely slaughtered. What about the Hamas documentary we discovered that was voiced by a Hamas official's son and he was paid for it? All of this on top of the fact they wanted £180 a year next year from your licence fee. This is a monumental story in every single newspaper. And it centres on this bit of editing. Deborah Tenness as well, who I actually know has resigned as the £415,000 a year head of news. She was poached from ITV. Oh dear, how sad, never mind. This is the footage that the BBC is in turmoil about. What they put out on Panorama, you'll hear first, and what actually Donald Trump said second. Good morning, have a watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
blatant editing. Your thoughts on this? It is our main news story this morning. 0344 499 1000. Telephone number for your calls. You can use that for your voice notes as well. We'd love you text 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Where does this leave you? What do you think about the BBC? Straight away, Sharon Miller. The BBC definitely needs to be defunded, Jez, and find their own way. She's in Staffordshire. Good morning to Tony. He says the BBC should be broken up and the licence tax abolished. The BBC is a national embarrassment. Other news stories. If you're having a bad morning, we're now encouraging illegal migrants to leave hotels by, oh yes, giving them £100. That's fantastic. And in another prisons fiasco, how long can Lammy last? A Palestine Action protester who was freed from jail, my friends, to go to his brother's wedding has, surprise, surprise, not returned to Wandsworth Prison. I don't know why Wandsworth Prison have gates or even fences. It should be an open house. Loads to talk about. Please do get involved. And my Monday is made even better, ladies and gentlemen, by the wonderful and talented Poppy Coburn. Good morning.
Good morning.
We've talked football. You're not a football fan at all, are you?
Absolutely not.
Boyfriend is, family are, she's not. She's have you got a spring in your step? Is your hat at a jaunty angle about the BBC?
Well, I am smiling this morning. I mean, it is a fantastic story, isn't it? I mean, for me, it's been the whole reaction to this. It's just been astonishing. You know, if this was any other news organisation, who would come out and defend it? And yet, because it's the saintly BBC, you know, all of the defenders of the BBC, the ex-B people, are coming forward and going, I can't believe that Donald Trump is running the media in this country. It's like having an authoritarian state. Any journalist will tell you, rule number one, don't lie. Don't lie. Well, and that is the most flagrant case of lie. I mean, it's not just telling a mistruth. It's actually going out of your way to find footage 50 minutes separately in a video of the president saying something to pretend that he was trying to incite an insurrection, which, by the way, could cause a diplomatic incident because it's our state broadcaster.
Absolutely.
And then passing it off as if that's what it said.
It's interesting. Over the weekend, as the story sort of developed, we had Nick Robinson from whatever programme he's on sort of saying, you know, I mean, we've made mistakes, but we're the paragons of virtue. And then we had John Simpson, who's 104, going quite right, and Boris, who has fallen right out of favour with me. But he was absolutely right. He said, why? This can't be allowed. I always go back to, Pops, I always go back to the fact this is supposed to be your state broadcaster. Yeah. Your state broadcaster is supposed to be balanced, right? That doesn't happen. A list for you. Hugh Edwards, you know, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace, Bob Villan. The Bob Villan thing, you know, let's be perfectly honest. We've talked about how the BBC has a political agenda. You know, the Bob Villan thing, apparently Davey was at Glastonbury and allowed it to continue on its streaming service for 5 hours, saying deaf to the IDF. Now, that is blatantly anti-Semitic. And if there was Islamophobia, if there was anything disrespectful, he would have been all over it. Yeah. And you cannot expect to get away with that.
I just thought the way that Nick Robinson was replying is classic BBC, right? It's just they never actually deal with the substance of the accusation made against them. No. They just deflect and they get defensive and they kind of put their elbows up like that and they're like, no, you can't touch this, you can't touch this. And it'll be easy for them to say, look, Boris Johnson, you know, what does he know about the truth? He lies all the time. But what about everyone else in the country who actually wants to believe that the BBC is impartial because they are paying for it and want to get a service that's of a certain quality? And, you know, you mentioned all these incidents. These are recent incidents. Yep. You know, there have been problems with the BBC going back for decades and decades. I think they're more obvious now, partly because they brought in all these young woke staffers who are not proper journalists, they're activists. They keep outsourcing all these documentaries. That was the case of the Gaza documentary. Oh, whoops, we accidentally interviewed the son of a Hamas official.
You know, there isn't much I can speak on in total experience, but commissioning television programmes I know about. And if a commissioning editor of a major network, right, wants to fill a gap, then all sorts of people put forward ideas in basic layperson's terms, and production companies come forward and go, that would be a good idea, that's a Hamas documentary. By the way, we're going to have it voiced by a Hamas official's son. Can I have your money? Yes. And then when it goes obviously wrong, they go, I didn't know anything about the production companies. Unbelievable. And I always think, again, phrases just as the morning continues, really, that it's become a bit like the NHS, the BBC. It sort of believes its own hype. It seems to feel that it's untouchable. Yeah. It doesn't have to justify its existence. And we live now in a competitive world where news output is 24/7, it's online, and you know from the Telegraph, we know at Talk, you only survive with how good you are, or the quality of the journalism or the output or whatever. I just think the BBC has become used to having their noses in the bleeding trough, and on top of that, you have these. You know, the Emily, all these people pontificating about how anybody that dares to disagree with their ideology is patently far right. It happened again yesterday. All these journalists, said Nick Robinson or John Simpson or one of them, that are attacking the BBC are all far right. No, we're not.
Isn't it
Are you
so,
far right?
No, but
No.
isn't it so funny that all these ex-BBC people, who, by the way, everyone, very impartial newsreaders, very impartial journalists, and yet the moment they leave the BBC and they tell us what they really think, lo and behold, they all share the exact same opinions. And that's why I find people like the Newsagents podcast so hysterical. They all agree with each other. It's all the establishment ideology. You know, and Tim Davie, I think, you know, he's a classic example of this. Look, it's a difficult job. I understand it's a difficult job. And yet, it's those judgment calls that he gets wrong. It's not just the Bob Villam thing as well. One of the things from the 19-page report that was leaked earlier in the last week was about the transgender issue, about how that was being handled by the BBC. I mean, they were utterly appalling. Apparently, they had a 4-person panel of LGBT sensitivity readers that would just sit around with a big stamp all day and go, no, 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 you're not running that. You've got to change that. You can't have this person write for you. You can't have this person on your show. I mean, what kind of are we a North Korean state broadcaster? I mean, it's unbelievable that you would have an unelected panel telling you what you can and can't do. But it's gone to the
point, I'm so with you, it's gone to the point where it's almost like, to me, God, without getting deep at 6:10 on a Monday morning, the BBC is symptomatic of what's happened to this country, in that anybody who doesn't seem to go down this crazy left-based woke, we need to worry about the perpetrators of crime rather than the victims, we need to find excuses, we need to wipe the backside of almost everybody, bar people who seem to speak common sense, like us lot. He's typical. I mean, just that Martine Croxall, you talk about the gender thing, that they wouldn't have anything to do with J.K. Rowling. Martine Croxall is reading the autocue, right, on the news, and she gets to pregnant people, right? So she changes it to pregnant women. They're inside, do you know this? They're inside whatever it is, unit that looks at... They censored her.
Yeah.
They censored her for saying pregnant woman.
Yeah, and making a facial expression that, frankly, anyone would in that situation, which is seeing pregnant people and going, what?
Can I play this? Because if she got fined for a facial expression, I'm not going to get any money by the end of this show. Martine Croxall, who we love, on the BBC, correcting pregnant people to pregnant woman. She got censored. Watch the eyebrow. It's outrageous.
London's School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has released research which says that nearly 600 heat-related deaths are expected in the UK. Malcolm Mystery, who is involved in the research, says that the aged, pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions need to take precautions.
I mean, it's just
how is that
sense.
outrageous?
It's just completely common sense. But this is the problem with Tim Davie, right? He would have signed off on that style guide. Because that was something that came from the very top, which is, do you say pregnant women, which is what everyone understands it to be, or do you say pregnant people? Do you use people's correct pronouns, or do you use people's preferred pronouns? You know, it's stuff like this.
Am I really old-fashioned? I'm sorry.
But you have to get it right from the top,
pregnant.
don't you?
I don't want to be pregnant.
Exactly.
I'm a man.
Exactly.
Sorry.
And frankly, most of the country agrees with you. Again, if the BBC is going to keep its monopoly, it has to represent the views of the vast majority of people.
I think that's a really interesting word that you just said. Monopoly. I think they've been used to having the monopoly. I think they've been used to calling the shots. I also want to take a slight aim this morning at Deborah Turnis on page 6 of the Mail. Following her appointment as the BBC's Director of News, Deborah Turnis, who was at ITV for years, we know, said that there had never been a greater need for its powerful brand of impartial, trusted journalism. Even yesterday she was saying, and I quote, "The great thing about the BBC is that it's impartial." It's not bloody impartial at all. That is not, by the way, for anybody tuning in thinking, we're being a bit harsh on the BBC this morning, they deserve it. You're going to sit there at the top of this pedestal passing judgment on anybody that dares to disagree with your views on all I mean, do you remember that? What was that really funny series with Downton Abbey, man? What was it called? What was it about the BBC? WA or what? W1A, and they go and have you not seen it? It's like a comedy series, and they're absolutely as woke as everything. And you go, right, well, we need to have a meeting this morning. We're in the Gaza documentary room. It's unbelievable, and you can't say jack. And you look at it as an institution, and you think, yeah, that's right. let's go back to what we were saying at the top, because so much response. Donald Trump is now being blamed by people from the BBC for costing... he wrote on Truth Social, this is brilliant. The top people at the BBC, including Tim Davies, spelt wrong, the boss, are all quitting, fired, because they were caught doctoring my incredibly perfect speech of January the 6th. Thank you to The Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are the very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they're from a foreign country, one that many consider our #1 ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. The Telegraph are friends with Donald Trump.
I'm sure that we're going to get censured next, isn't it, by the BBC protection squad. I mean, you know, again, why would you not be upset if you are the leader of our closest ally and you are being portrayed as some kind of, like, murderous lunatic that's trying to start a riot on Capitol Hill, where he was actually cleared of all federal charges on that?
Absolutely.
You know, again, it's actually dangerous. I think if any other media company had done this, you would see completely across-the-board condemnation. Be like, oh, my goodness, what disgusting case of political bias. Let's all come out there and say it's awful and appalling and no journalist should do this. And yet, because it's the BBC, there's a different standard. And I know there are a lot of good people at the BBC who keep their heads down and just have to deal with this culture. But what's important to remember is at the top is just completely captured.
Completely.
It's completely captured.
Really want to hear from you this morning, because it's piling in on the BBC, and I'm not going to hold back, because there's more of you listening than ever before. This is where the nation comes to talk. We want to hear from you this morning. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. It just continues. Page 8 of the Daily Mail. This is really interesting. You'll know I have a massive problem with anti-Semitism, and I repeat it every day, and some people get angry. I don't like racism in any way. I don't understand how racism against Jewish people is not given the same importance as it should do in terms of how people are treated. More than 200 Jewish staff accused the BBC of ignoring their calls for anti-Semitism probes. I mean, more, you know, and you look at Davey and you think, right, so there's anti-Semitism. Blatantly, you should have done more with that paedophile Edwards. The Bob Villain thing is Marty, all of it, right? And now, on the altar of your ideology, you and your cronies are going to blame Donald Trump.
It's just ridiculous.
I wonder who pressurised David. Do you think anybody did from the government?
If it was a Conservative government, I'd say yes. Because it's coming from the Labour government, I'm unsure. Although Lisa Nandy has been coming out in the last week and saying this is unacceptable. This is
great news, by the way. This is just a political comment you might disagree with. I think yesterday the happiest person in the United Kingdom was Lisa Nandy.
Yeah.
Because this, of course, takes the heat off her for accepting a donation to her... Was it her leadership campaign from some dodgy individual? So now she can come out and say, oh, the BBC are outrageous. What else do you think happens? Anybody else? Any other heads might go? Heads might roll?
I mean, I think, again, this is the problem with the government structure of the BBC, because the BBC board, a lot of it is politically appointed, right?
Yeah.
And so different governments will get in and they'll put their own people in. I mean, I know that some people, someone like Robbie Gibb, will get a lot of stick. They'll say he's the Conservative Party's man on the inside, he's so awful. And yet all of these lefties get to just get away with it. And apparently they're neutral voices, and so we can't talk about them. I think the problem, though, is that the BBC continues to see itself as being non-partisan, but what it actually is its establishment ideology. And we shouldn't be surprised, because it's a state broadcaster. Of course the state broadcaster is going to be the establishment ideology. The problem for them now is, in a world where people are becoming more politically polarised, why should half the country that completely disagrees with what the BBC is doing, with its outlook on life, have to pay the licence fee? And I think questions over its funding in the coming years, even from someone like Lisa Nandy, who's a member of the Labour Party, are very much up in the air.
And the market's changed, hasn't it? As I said earlier, the way people get their news and the way people, you know, gather information is different. But the BBC, going back to that whole sort of, you know, we belong, we're it, we've got the monopoly. I mean, it was only, what, a week ago, they were talking about increasing the licence fee to 180 quid.
Yeah.
We would never condone. You can't say to somebody, don't pay it. But you've got Boris Johnson writing in the Mail on Saturday saying he's not paying his. They need to be, I think, working in that competitive market like everybody else. And I suspect that if they were a subscription service, they would not have untold money to make untold bad programmes featuring untoldly bad people. I just think it would change the whole dynamic. I think if they had to become competitive, I actually think their journalism would have to improve, because if you don't talk what people want to talk about... Oh, hold on. The next BBC scandal with Tim Davies' severance deal, says David in Liverpool. He knows something I don't. It's true, isn't it? I think they need to be competitive. The world's changed.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's even like, if you're a friend of the BBC, you need it to change, because it can't go on like like this. It can't go on having every week this new scandal that's popping up and just completely destroying any legitimacy they had. I mean, I actually think the turning point was when they opened that BBC Verify unit.
Yeah.
I thought that was like so dystopian, that what you're telling me that the BBC has a team of its fact checkers who just so happen to get half the facts wrong, telling me what's the truth.
Marking your own homework, it's called, isn't it?
The BBC, in the golden age of the BBC, right, in the 20th century, you know, there's the 60s and the 70s, you have serious people talking to you seriously about the facts, right? They would treat you like an adult, they would sit you down, these are the facts of the world, here are these interesting programmes producing, we don't think you're an idiot, so there's that. Now you look at it and they treat you like you've got some kind of head injury.
Yep.
You know, they do not treat you like you are a serious person.
Brilliant.
You read the BBC News website and it's just unbelievable.
It's condescending, isn't it?
It's so condescending. And again, like working in a newspaper, you realise that because they're completely insulated from those market forces.
I make no apology for the fact that you know, I'd love to have somebody like Donald Trump. I do understand there's much about him that's flawed running this country because you could feel it being done. I also would love to have Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, who just fantastic. She takes no prisoners. This is her on the BBC. Go on, Kazza, go.
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them because, unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak, unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines. They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh. Okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front.
How good is she?
I actually commissioned her before she became press secretary.
For
Seriously,
what?
I got her to write for The Telegraph.
Did you?
Last year, before Donald Trump won the election. She's fantastic.
There are people already saying that she could step up to being a senator and could be a lot more. She doesn't care, does she?
You know how old she is? She's like 26.
She's got a baby of about 2 years old.
Yeah, she's a real superstar. Superstar.
So listen, big news story this morning. Donald Trump has slammed the BBC's Director General Tim Davie. He resigned last night along with Deborah Turness, the head of news, over their deceptive editing of his speech from a few years ago about the Capitol rows. This follows scandal after scandal. Where do we start? Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace, that idiot Bob Villan, Martin Croxall, the Gaza documentary. You won't let J.K. Rowling be interviewed at all. It's a complete ideological mess, and he's been made to pay this morning. I am really interested in your response. Listen, so many people will do some text after this break, but what do you want to say? What do you think about the BBC? Not are you going to pay your licence fee? Yet you can argue you think it's worthless and that they should change, but what do you think of the state broadcaster? I'm embarrassed. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. You're with Talk. It's Morning Glory.
I mean, it is really heartbreaking to see, you know, a gentleman like that when he's talking and reflecting back on his military service and what that means for him now. Of course, it's incredibly moving. You know, I'm a veteran myself. I served in Afghanistan. And when I heard him speaking, I think it really sort of made me reflect on my own service in Afghanistan. And also, I was kind of thinking, obviously, he spoke a little bit about why he has the feelings that he does now. But I was also just reflecting on what kind of things made me feel the same way as well.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hey, very good morning to you. What is it? Monday the 10th of November, the morning after the night before. Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, has resigned. One scandal too many. Donald Trump's being accused of bringing him down. We'll talk loads about that. You're waking up to the news that asylum seekers are being encouraged to leave their four-star hotels with £100. That's it. We'll give you some money because, frankly, you haven't had enough. And as if that doesn't make you want to turn over and go back to sleep, you know Wandsworth Prison, the world's easiest place to break out of? It's happened again. A Palestine Action protester, in brackets, interesting, close brackets, was allowed to go to his brother's wedding for the weekend. I know you're a criminal, but you can go to your brother's wedding for the weekend. He hasn't come back. And just in a slightly light-hearted way, which I should salute the team for. If that's not enough, ladies and gentlemen, let me throw this at you, Poppy, you're going to love this. Brits are paying 20 million quid a year to train tax collectors in Ethiopia. Labour councillors are spending 35,000 on LGBT zebra crossings, which they say, while saying they'll never tackle fly tipping, and they've told residents to wait 103 years to have their bloody potholes filled. What is a LGBT zebra crossing? What does that mean?
I actually do know what this means, because
there's
one near where my boyfriend lives. So what they do is they spend £500,000 on painting the side of the road the colours of the rainbow. It's serious. I'm not joking. And you're making a face like I'm pulling your leg.
Because the zebra crossing's black and white?
Yes. So they now press it to be all the colours of the rainbow, and it's great because if you've got a guide dog and if you're partially sighted, it means that you can no longer see it. So it's then a complete waste of time for those people. So you've been so woke, you ended up going out the other side and being uninclusive.
Christian will know I am not lying. Christian and I, because we have young babies, probably spend a large amount of the early mornings watching crap on the television, not on the BBC. Bar Black Sheep is now on my children's life. Bar Rainbow Sheep. That is what they. I'm not even making. Do you know this? Do you know this? Bar Rainbow Sheep. I don't know why I'm singing it, for God's sake. My life, honestly, Bar Rainbow Sheep. Back to the fiasco that is the BBC. Can I say some great response, some great guests lined up this morning on Morning Glory. Richard Tice and Nigel Farage from Reform will be here. Andrew Griffiths from the Tories. Loads of people. The lady wants to defund the BBC. Loads of response. Loads. Good morning to Jules in London. Good morning, Jez and Poppy. The way the BBC are going, I reckon the next Director General will be a drag queen. Interesting. Dave, morning, Jez. Tim Davie shouldn't have been able to quit. It's interesting. He should have been fired with no payout, no pension. The man is a disgrace. Paul's in Manchester. I bow my head in shame, guys. Tim Davie should have been sacked, not given the chance to resign. If he resigns, he will get a big payoff. Trump should still sue him for libel and defamation. Did actually that? You know the Telegraph did. Do you think Trump would have done that? Do you think he would have sued, or do you think he wasn't that bothered, to be honest?
I honestly don't think he's that bothered, to be honest with you. I think he gets attacks from the US media every single day, because they're even worse than ours, if you can believe it. They're much more progressive.
Is that possible?
I think the problem that, because BBC is the state broadcaster, he would have brought it up in diplomatic meetings with the UK. I think it would have been quite a problem.
So all the people, if you're waking up, all the gravy-trained journalists who are going, this is outrageous, the far right are trying to destroy the BBC, have now got a target. They're blaming Donald Trump, who is responsible for everything bad in the world. Good morning to John, who says, I stopped watching the British Bull Blank Corporation years ago with the Brexit bias. I don't know what the big shock is. They're unbiased. They are not unbiased in anything they do. Mark's in Croydon. Morning, Jez. The BBC is everything that's wrong with the UK. It used to have some shows worth watching when I grew up, but now it is the biggest woke left-leading nonsense. Oh, I'm not going to repeat that. Yeah, he's right. There wasn't any more. Shane, in not-so-sunny Bournemouth, you're telling me I left there at 2am. The BBC needs to be abolished. No one watches it and no one needs it. If anyone was still watching EastEnders in 2025, they need to get a life. the show and the station is dead. And finally, for now, Pete, if the BBC think that Davies's resignation will draw a line under all of this, it won't, because that edited footage was deliberate deception, fraudulent. Someone needs to answer. I mean, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I mean, from a journalist point of view, why should that not be taken further?
Well, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, there's a difference between bias. I mean, bias is a problem, but we're all human. I think you're going to end up with a bit of bias wherever you go.
Yep.
And actively going out of your way to lie about the most powerful man in the world and pretend that he was trying to incite a riot. I mean, that's really, really, really serious. And I don't know how much further you can take that in terms of, like, legal proceedings, but we don't have free speech in this country. This has been made very, very clear with all the people that have had their tweets causing them to go to jail. So why shouldn't they face some consequences?
Couldn't agree more. Whatever you make of this, what does the BBC mean to you? 6:30, Monday the 10th of November, 0344 499 1000. You text 87222. Pete, good morning.
Jeremy, that edited footage was clearly deception and fraudulent footage. Why should a taxpayer pay what, in my opinion, is a legalised extortion for a TV channel that not only shields paedophiles, but tells lies, and it are deliberate lies? And Davies' resignation shouldn't be the end of this. If they think there's going to draw a line under it, someone needs to go to jail, because that's fraud, and that's inciting violence, deliberately deceptive and fraudulent footage. I hope Donald Trump sues the backside of the BBC and it shuts them down.
It's I mean, it will be called far right by the people on the Today programme, but I agree with absolutely everything that Pete says.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it is appalling. That footage in and of itself is enough for Tim Davie to have resigned. I know they've said it's death of 1,000 cuts, and that is true, but this in and of itself should have caused a massive, massive scandal within the BBC. And yet, all the reporting says that he thought it was just a Telegraph out to get him, right-wing press out to get me, you're so biased, you don't like it.
He said in his leaving statement, I think I got this right, he said they've been massively... Oh, yes, this is entirely my decision. I remain very thankful to the chair and the board for their unswerving and unanimous support throughout my entire tenure, including recent days. I'd have sacked his backside within a heartbeat.
Yeah. I just think this culture of the golden handshake...
Culture's the word.
You know, it's a big, big, big problem. And that's why I think just bringing in this new person, this Deborah Turnus lady... I don't know. I think they need to do some kind of inquiry. I mean, we love inquiries in this country. Look at the internal culture. You know, let's get really into the weeds of the problems here, because I just think this stuff is going to keep happening. It's every week now that we hear a story about the BBC. I swear, it's every single week. We've got a massive scandal that in and of itself is reason for someone to resign. You know, there's got a real cultural problem.
I don't disagree, and I think not only should there be an inquiry, but I think that people quite rightly expect the BBC to have standards that the rest of us... The BBC is like so many journalists, so many papers, to be fair, that will pass judgment very quickly and look at how people behave. But when the light is shone on them, it's a different story. What do you make of the BBC scandal this morning? Do you think that you have any faith? Are you going to continue with your licence fee? This is where the nation comes to talk. We want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Paul in Dorset. Yippee, my Monday is made. Tim Davie has gone. Morning, Jez. You've listed many of the blatant left-wing bias shown by the BBC. It must be time to end. Have I got news for you? And that awful Ian Hislop spouting his own political agenda. Jez, Starmer managed to stay in our country long enough to show his face at the cenotaph. How bloody dare he? Linda, mother of 2 sons in our armed forces. Yes, I was quite surprised, but he's on his way to COP30 now, or cop out, as I call it. Maggie, hope Trump slings out the BBC journalists from the press room in the White House, or at least Caroline addresses them as only she can. The BBC has treated us like idiots for years. That will be really interesting if that happens. Paul, Jez, Tim Davie went to Glastonbury with 500 managers. I'll say that again, 500 managers that we paid for, taxpayers. The licence fee is mandatory and should be scrapped. Let's move on. Keep those calls coming. Loads of you. I just want to take a moment. Tomorrow is the 11th of November, obviously Armistice Day, and around which all quite rightly of our remembrance celebration takes place. I was talking to the boss last night, and he was saying that in his little village that he'd never seen numbers of people as there were yesterday at 11 o'clock showing their respects to the fallen. My son, Oliver, carried the flag He's in the cubs, the smaller things, squirrels, and he was carrying it, and it was massively popular. And we seem to be at a moment in this country where division seems to be rife, and also actually where, you know, we're not allowed to be proud and we're not allowed to say thank you. And I was touched not only by both of those stories, but did you see the old guy? Did you see the veteran on GMB?
I did.
This breaks my heart. When we go on about, oh, it's important that a man can have a baby or whatever rubbish. This is a guy, a veteran, Alex Penstone, on what it means to him. Have a watch.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
I don't say this anything other than from the heart. That breaks my heart, that does. Yeah. It really breaks my heart. And all those people that don't seem to understand what happened in the past, you know, all these entitled people that wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, you know, that's what the word sacrifice actually means, right? The ultimate sacrifice, literally giving your life for a country. You know, I do wonder, you know, if we were, heaven forbid, invaded, you know, we went to war again, how many people would actually fight for this country? Because look how we treat our veterans now. Yeah. I mean, look how we treat the people that fought in Afghanistan. You know, I think it's absolutely appalling. You know, we treat these people like they're yesterday's men, like, oh, you know, horrible white men, we don't want anything to do with you lot, you know, you're not woke, whatever, you're not the future of Britain. And yeah, it is appalling, because we're a different country.
I think the way we treat our veterans is one of the biggest national disgraces. We talk quite rightly about things that matter to this country. Yeah. Veterans, people who gave their lives, have been injured, maimed in many instances, not treated in the right way. It's beyond me, that. I don't get it. Yeah. We'd love to know what Remembrance Sunday meant to you, what tomorrow. My mother, who's no longer with us, was born on Armistice Day. Imagine that. So it was massive in our house. So 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. I want to take you to the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Now, people, you will have woken up this morning and gone, yippee! Yippee, Tim Davies gone, the BBC's in turmoil. And you might have thought, I'm going to jump out of bed and have a wonderful day. While you're going to screech to a halt when I read you this on the front page of the Telegraph. Asylum seekers are to be given £100 a week to leave taxpayer-funded hotels under plans being considered by ministers. Home Office officials are proposing that migrants use the money to live with family or an individual they know as part of Sir Keir Starmer's drive to accelerate the closure of asylum hotels. Now, you're a journalist, I'm not. They're proposing that the migrants use the £100 to live with family. Why would they not, if they'd come to this country and had family, been made to bloody well live with the family from the outset? 'Tis not the truth they haven't got any family because they're over here on a freebie.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, it comes down to, do the people who are running the Home Office actually understand what incentives mean? Again, when you're told that if you come to this country, you will be given a handout, literally a wad of cash, just for illegally entering the country. And again, it's this culture of, like, actually rewarding bad behaviour. Yeah. I mean, I think the most awful example of this was the Ethiopian asylum seeker who assaulted that girl in Epping, who was paid money to be deported from the country.
Do you know what? It must have been only you and me. Somebody actually said to me, and I wouldn't quote who it was, because they said, I'd accept that to get them out of the country. I genuinely wouldn't. That piece of whatever who sexually assaulted a girl was given £500 to leave.
And the girl's father...
Am I right? Is there a country in the world that you would sexually assault somebody and be told, there's £500, can you leave? Yeah. No, you'd have chains on your ankles and your hands and you'd be thrown out of the country.
Exactly. It's so perverse. And the girl's dad came out and said, imagine how it feels for my daughter. She's just been rewarded. This man has been rewarded for sexually assaulting a child. And again, you can come out and say, well, we need to do this to incentivise people to leave. I'm sorry, if you've committed a crime, you've already committed a crime by coming here illegally. Now you've committed an additional crime, you've just traumatised a woman for life, and we're giving you £500. And there's no way to stop you from coming back as well, because frankly, if you get on a boat and you travel over again, what, are you going to be paid more money.
What about that one that was thrown out and came back 28 days later?
Well, there you go. I mean, the government's been talking last week about it's going to adopt, or it's thinking about adopting Denmark's asylum policy.
Yes, I've heard this, and also I was going to put this to Nigel Farage, who's on the show later, because many of the right-wing press this weekend, left-wing press, have been saying not a word from Reform. They've had the carpet pulled from underneath them. Watch their numbers fall now. Zach Polanski will be the next Prime Minister. Zach Polanski.
Well, it's just a load of rubbish, because they're not going to do it. I mean,
Zach, can we just have a moment? Can we have a Monday morning moment? Zach Polanski?
Oh, yeah, I mean, he's the boob whisperer, as he's known in my household.
Is that what he's called, the boob whisperer? If you think we're madness, this guy used to be a hypnotist, the head of the Greens, and apparently he used to say to women, I can make your breasts bigger by talking to you. I don't mean to be rude. That sounds like the worst shut-up line in the world, right?
Oh, Jeremy, you'll love this, though, because it's not just him. It's one of the deputy Green leaders, not Martha Ali, the lady Rachel Millward. She's had a really funny week, because obviously she's all about open borders and happiness, and we're going to do a kinder, gentler politics. But guess what she's been complaining about in the last week? They want to house 600 asylum-seeking males in her constituency, her leafy constituency. And suddenly, we can't have them here.
No.
I mean, they can go into working-class constituencies that I don't care about, but they can't come into my constituency.
Don't mean to be bashing the Greens, but that's brilliant.
It's fantastic.
Plus the fact that Polanski did an interview over the weekend, Christian try and find this brilliant, where he literally, with a straight face, said, I want a peaceful world, I want a world where... Obviously, I charge everybody 70% tax, but I believe that we could have a world with no wars, and I could talk. Did you see this?
I saw this.
Vladimir Putin into giving up his weapons. I feel like if I was the Prime Minister, I could go to Russia and Vlad would listen to me.
Isn't it so fun? No, but listen, reform gets so much stick for the stuff that they come out with. You're populist, you're right-wing populist, you don't have serious policies. And yet the Green Party is coming out here saying we're going to politely ask Vladimir Putin to please hand over his nuclear weapons, and they're treated seriously.
Back to migrants, I understand completely how frustrated people must be, just to the point of derision, where we seem to be, well, I went to work in America for 4 years. It took 6 months to get a visa. If you wanted medical treatment in America, you had to pay for it. Seemingly here, everybody gets their backsides wiped, and we're in this loop, this BBC-led loop of madness. This has to be my story of the morning on page 10. Whichever part of the team found this, I congratulate you enormously. Get the camera on Poppy's face. A migrant helpline being used to advise trivial issues, including how to fix your kettle and complaints about food, is part of a £120 million taxpayer-funded call centre.
Sorry, how much?
Right. Run by charity Migrant Help, it's available 24 hours a day to asylum seekers in accommodation and can be used to report a range of problems, from heading to how do I get to see a doctor, how do I mend my kettle, how do I park the car you've given me, and I don't like the food you've given me for free. That's 100... Look at her face. It's not us, is it? It is absolutely ludicrous, man.
It just feels like you're repeating yourself, but again, it has to be said, at a time when no one in the country could afford to have those nice little treats anymore, you can't get a doctor's appointment, you can't afford to go on a holiday, certainly not, you can't get your child a place in school, and yet the government says, we're all in this together, we've all got to tighten our belts, and yet they are spending all of this money on something that nobody wanted in the first place. Why raise taxes? Cut this stuff first. If you still need to raise taxes afterwards, do that.
Let me try and be balanced. We're saying the BBC should be balanced. Do you think it's fair that somebody who's had to escape no, it's not Wharton, is it? And come on a boat to England and suffer... Oh, no, been staying in a hotel. What happens if you don't know how to work your kettle? Don't you think we as a society should be... Oh, Jesus, I can't even keep a straight face. 0344 499 1000. Poppy Coburn from The Telegraph is here on the day after... the night before, that saw Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, resign. What do you make of it? Is it about time? I mean, should there be more to this? They've admitted doctoring that speech of Donald Trump over the Capitol riot. Should other heads be rolling? Should somebody go to prison? You're also waking up to the news that, thanks for staying as an asylum seeker. We don't want to get rid of you. We're not going to do that. We're just going to get you out of the hotel, so give you £100 a week to go and live with somebody else. Why don't you just deport them? If you are waking up thinking, can it get worse? Yes, a Palestine Action protester who was temporarily freed from that wonderful prison, Wandsworth, HMP Wandsworth. Just go to your brother's wedding for an hour or two, and then it didn't come back. So that's 3. David Lammy. It's a great morning. 6:45 on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 13 minutes to 7 o'clock, Monday the 10th of November. You were Morning Glory. JK here. Well, you're waking up to the story that Donald Trump has slammed the BBC Director General, the outgoing one, Tim Davie. They have admitted deceptive editing of the President's speech about the Capitol riots. This follows what? Scandal after scandal, Poppy. What we're talking, Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Martin Crotzel, Greg Wallace, Bob Vill, and finally Tim Davie is gone. But then it starts a whole thing. How far does it go? I mean, should somebody be prosecuted? What about the BBC licence fee? £174.50 at the moment. No choice. You have to pay it, otherwise you're arrested. I'd like to get some figures on how many people do get arrested and what happens to them, actually. Not that we're condoning anything, but last week they wanted more money.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. People are in jail at the moment for not paying for the licence fee. I mean, it's
people are in jail for paying.
Yeah. You can be jailed for it. I mean, you know.
Sorry, Hugh Edwards is still walking around.
And Hugh Edwards is still walking free.
Right. Okay,
exactly. Yeah, you're being held hostage essentially for this service.
Yes.
You can't even watch PMQs without having a licence fee. I mean, you have to have a BBC login to get in and just watch what your own parliamentarians are doing.
Is that true?
Yeah, true.
This
is
brilliant.
Can't watch it.
Phil's got some thoughts. Morning, Phil.
Good morning, Jez. It's Phil from Nottingham. Just regards the BBC. I remember watching programmes on the BBC and their efforts in the war and those fabulous radio broadcasts. And growing up, massive sporting events like the World Cup or the Olympic Games that the BBC would cover so well. You'd always go to the BBC, with all due respect, not ITV. And things as I was growing up, like the fall of the Berlin Wall and the reporting that was done there, the exploding space shuttle, and you'd always go to the BBC. And now, honestly, I'd defund it, I'd sell it off, I'd scrap it, I'd get rid of it. It's gone.
Couldn't agree more. I was just sitting here, things come to me, it's my age. I used to sit with my mother, dearly departed, and watch with mother. Does anybody know what this is? They wouldn't call it on the BBC. They don't watch it with a man with breasts or something. You couldn't actually call a programme Watch with Mother. We used to sit down. He's dead right. You know what Phil's right? The BBC was the go-to thing for news, for documentaries, for It's not. It's not. It's a huge conglomerate of leftist ideology that is out of date and needs fundamental change. Sean's in Norfolk, which is brave. I'm joking. On the BBC, it's the Meghan Markle of the journalistic world, another organisation that shows how the United Kingdom is falling apart. Hello to Bill in Cheshire. We're all over the place today. Just switched on the BBC News inadvertently. First thing I see is a plug for BBC Verified telling me what they do and how good they are, says Bill in Cheshire,
there you go.
who swiftly switched off. Margaret, I don't know why I did that, she's in Yorkshire. Even the series of Porridge never saw prisoners escape so readily. She's on the back of the news this morning that a Palestine Action protester who was temporarily freed from jail to go to his brother's wedding has failed to return to Wandsworth prison. Well, the gates were open. You were asking me, released to go... sorry for committing horrible crimes. You just go to your brother's wedding for the weekend.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. One time when I was talking to you, we were talking about a story of a man who missed his court date because he wanted to go get some fish and chips. And there's a fantastic photo of him just tucking into his fish and chips lunch.
I really do. I fear for myself. Pete in Croydon, just like those idiot ministers, Rayner, etc., who had to go, Davie and Turness acted like they just made a mistake. They got found out, and these people cannot treat us any longer as idiots. Graham's in and Skilling. You just mentioned you're having Richard Tice and Nigel Farage on the show later. Can you please ask both of them if they're prepared to defund the BBC when they get into power and press for a yes/no? Yes, I will do, because I think it's a really interesting point. I really do. After the break, by the way, so this is how well prepared Christian is. We're going to find out how many convictions there were over people who didn't pay the licence fee. But it's all action this morning. If you are waking up and you're thinking, where is my money going? It's going on £100 a week to migrants to leave hotels, but that's not all. This is a brilliant, brilliant story, to the point of it's not brilliant. I want to hang myself. Brits are paying £20 million to train tax inspectors in Ethiopia. Now, I have absolutely no idea, but we know. Do you not remember that great clip from Ange? Ange, before she had to go off and set up a new company called Wrong Move, Ange had close ties with Ethiopia. Have a watch.
It's been an incredible experience coming to Ethiopia. The UK is committed to working with Ethiopia and the UK economy to work with the Ethiopian economy. His aspirations for Ethiopia's future. It was great to visit Ethiopia's stock exchange and learn more about how it's unlocking Ethiopia's potential. We will build on to deliver jobs for Ethiopia and the UK. The UK continues to work with Ethiopia here in the UK and Ethiopia.
Ethiopia.
Did she have some kind of bet where it was how many times can you say Ethiopia?
Well, possibly. They said for every time you mention Ethiopia, you'll get 10 grand off your stamp duty. I'm joking, obviously. By the way, you're a political journalist. She'll be back. You watch.
Oh no, I'm sure she will be.
Absolutely.
Probably at the helm.
I think she and what's that new Lucy Powell and Burnham are plotting big time.
I always say Ed Miliband, keep your eyes on him.
I don't want to keep my eyes on him because I'm just about to have my breakfast.
I break your heart, but seriously, think about it.
Brits are paying 20 million quid to train tax inspectors in Ethiopia. Plus, Labour councils, ladies and gentlemen, this is my story of the morning, are spending £35,000 on LGBT zebra crossings, whilst also saying, we won't tackle fly tipping and we've told residents you'll have to wait for 103 years to fill in a pothole. If you didn't hear Poppy Coburn say this 10 minutes ago, I needed to repeat it because it's that mad you won't believe it. What is an LGBT zebra crossing plus glass whatever? What's on the screen? Oh my God, there it is.
It's quite simple.
My God, it's on the screen.
It's a rainbow-coloured zebra crossing that they charge you £500,000 for. And then it then means that if you're partially sighted or if you have a guide dog, you then can't walk across it because it confuses them. So that's where your taxpayer money is going.
And is this because black and white is wrong and racist? Or why are we doing this?
I think it's got something to do with showing how virtuous and progressive you are.
Having a zebra crossing.
You're so virtuous and progressive, you have to spend someone else's money to prove it with the ugliest thing you've ever seen in your life. I mean, it's a bit of an eyesore, isn't it? Just the colours. It's.
I have to be honest. Very quickly, after the old man passed, he was in a care home, and about 3 months later, I drove past, and it had a rainbow flag up, and it said, "We're now a diverse home for the elderly, and we welcome." I'm just so glad he died because I'd been thrown out. My father would have been thrown out. He'd have phoned me up and gone, what the hell's going on, Jez? Right, listen, 0344 499 1000. Poppy and I looking through the papers. Still to come, Andrew, Mountbatten, Windsor.
Back again, Andy.
He's in the mire. All of that coming up. Don't go anywhere.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, almost 7 o'clock. Poppy Kerbo from The Telegraph. Couple of final quick stories in your excellent newspaper. Parliament to discuss unanswered Andrew Mountbatten Windsor questions this week.
Questions like, where's he living? Where's the money going to go?
Yeah.
Why is he staying in the country and he hasn't left in disgrace?
Or, what organisation do you think he picked to do his unfiltered interview? Oh, the BBC. That's very interesting, isn't it? Well done, Christian. Great line. Also, police did nothing about 100 reports of shoplifting. We're not surprised, are we?
I've complained about this before, because where I work in Victoria Station, I must see 100 shoplifting incidents every day.
You see it?
No, seriously, there's a Pret that's right next to my work. I go in there to get my £5 coffee sometimes when I'm feeling flush.
So cynical for so young.
And I see these people walk in and they just go to the shelf and they get their arm and they just go, and that's all the baguettes for the day. And the staff just go, but I don't blame them, they're probably making minimum wage, but it does kind of give you a nice attitude in the morning when you're about to go work at your newspaper, like, oh, the country's in a great state, isn't it? Why do I bother? Why do I bother?
Well, you bother coming here every Monday and we love it. Thank you so much as ever. Rush through the papers with Poppy Kerbo, Deputy Content Editor at The Telegraph. On the day you're waking up to Tim Davie, the BBC's Director General, has gone. Should we defund the BBC? Is the licence fee worth it? And if you are stressing this morning, don't worry, it's fine. We're getting migrants out of hotels by giving them £100 in cash. Oh, and people are still escaping from Wandsworth Prison. But there's much to be happy about because Christmas is just around the corner. This is Talk, it's Morning Glory, and the news at 7 is next. Good morning.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the Channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert.
Many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants, and as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here, with very
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good morning, my friends. Welcome along. It is Talk, the home of free speech, common sense, where the nation comes to talk. You're waking up to the shockingly brilliant news that the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, resigned late last night, along with the corporation's head of news, Deborah Turness. Basically, they've admitted to deceptive editing of Donald Trump's speech over the Capitol riots. I don't know if you picked up on this. An astonishingly big story. We have watched Tim Davie survive scandal after scandal, be it Hugh Edwards, be it Gary Lineker, be it Greg Wallace, Bob Villan, that vile human being that shouted deaf to the IDF. We've watched Martin Croxall, that newsreader, be censured for saying pregnant woman instead of pregnant people. We've watched Gaza documentaries, you know, voiced by Hamas officials' children. We've seen their views on the trans argument, and we've listened to their left-wing bias. And now they're all up in arms because they're blaming Donald Trump for bringing them down. This is the article, the Panorama interview that did it finally for Tim Davie. First, you'll see what Panorama and hear what Panorama played. Then you'll hear the truth. This is appalling. Have a watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It is unbelievable, and as you wake up this morning, as you go about your daily business, I would love to know what the BBC now means to you. Should it be defunded? Should it be thrown out? Should the licence fee go? They are a huge organisation that I think has just got comfortable and needs to be answerable to the people who pay for their existence. It's a different market nowadays. Donald Trump on Truth Social overnight, with lots of capitals. The top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, are quitting/fired because they were caught doctoring my very good, perfect speech of January the 6th. Thank you to The Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our #1 ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. Let us know what you think this morning. 0344 499 1000. Also in the mix for your delectation, we're getting, apparently, if you're the government, we're going to get asylum seekers out of hotels by giving them 100 quid. Yes, more money, 100 quid. And if you were thinking over the weekend, oh, I'm so glad that we've sorted out the prison thing. Just to cut, that's happened again. A Palestine Action protester who was in the nick, he just said on Friday, do you think I could go to my brother's wedding? And they said, absolutely. Go at 10 and come back at 5. He hasn't come back. HM Wandsworth, it doesn't have any gates. The world's worst prison. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Actually, we've got some breaking news. BBC Chairman Samir Shah is expected to apologise and provide further details on that Panorama episode that aired the edited speech by Donald Trump. He will give his response to the Culture, Media and Support Committee today after it asked how he would address concerns. We'll keep you updated throughout the day on Talk. Right now, delighted to say a very good morning to the Deputy Leader of Reform UK and a man with several opinions that will be very interesting to hear. Richard Tice. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very good morning to you, Jeremy. I sense a certain gloating in your presentation this morning about your rivals, the BBC.
Not gloating. I'll tell you how I see it, and I'd love to know how you see it. I think it's a cancer from the top of the BBC downwards. I understand the importance, Richard, of having a state broadcaster. I would have thought it pertinent for that broadcaster, that state broadcaster, to be unbiased and to be balanced, and yet it seems to have allowed scandal after scandal to be passed off as if the rest of us are mad, or as some journalists from the BBC were saying over the weekend, it's the far right out to nullify democracy. The truth is, and I listed them, Hugh Edwards, the paedophile who's still walking free, Lineker, who spouted anti-Britishism and was being paid £1.5 million, Greg Wallace, Bob Villan, that's anti-Semite, Martin Croxall. The list goes on. I'm going to go straight to it with you because I've had this question and I'm not allowed to accept any word salad. When you get into power, says Richard, and Nigel's on the show later, will you commit to defunding the BBC, Richard Tice?
Look, I think there's no question the BBC is in the last chance saloon, and we're seeing an institution that is rotten from the very top. It is essentially dysfunctional in the way it runs, but I'm going to try and be optimistic to start with. There's much of what is produced by the BBC and some of the sporting coverage, some of the programmes that do things like Strictly, which is brilliant, and in a sense everybody loves. The issue is actually with BBC News and whether or not that has maintained or completely lost its impartiality. I think we all know that it's completely lost it. So that's the core of it. But here's the thing. It's taken them a week to apologise, and they still haven't done so because they couldn't agree a statement, because the BBC board is at war with itself, and it has led to I think it just typifies the whole problem with the organisation. And
well, we broke that news a minute ago that the chairman, Samir Shah, is expected in front of the.
Yeah, but Jeremy, when you look at the statements by Samir Shah so far, and by Tim Davie, and by Deborah Turness, the head of news, who's just resigned as well, there's very little contrition and apology from them. There is a degree of arrogance about it, which I think typifies the leadership.
So how would reform deal with that arrogance? Because I think you're absolutely right. And the reason that so many people are angry this morning, and it can come down, they'll say, about the licence fee. But for me, a bit like the NHS, this body has been allowed to garner so much control and so much power that it doesn't seem answerable to the very people whose existence it relies on, which is the British taxpayer. I'm being straight with you. Do you not think that it is time for the BBC to not be paid money willy-nilly, but rather prove that the very value of the programmes you talked about, Richard, means that I want to subscribe to pay for it? Surely that's only fair in the market we're in.
All those things have got to be looked at once they get through this current crisis. But there has to be, for it to try and justify its charter, and for those who want it to stay as it is, they've got to prove that they can turn this around. And, otherwise, more and more people will say, we've got to completely change the whole thing. So, as I say, it's the last chance saloon. But I do want to just emphasise this point. The rot is around the leadership and the board structure and BBC News. I think, there's many elements of lots of the other programmes. Arguably, the BBC is trying to do too much. And actually, why do you need things like BBC Arabic? Actually, why not just focus on looking after the UK and doing BBC World? Stick to what you do well, which they've then ended up not doing well, and remove that institutional bias, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's climate, all of these things they've got to do so much better on. They're just announcing an inquiry into their climate bias, to which I say, well, as long as it's independent. If it's not independent, what's the point?
I do take your point, and I will say, Traitors, for example, has been the most successful television programme of the last 10 years, and you touch upon Strictly, and I absolutely get that. But for me, there is now a point. You're right about the news service. To me, listen to this from Jackie. I've said for decades that the left has infiltrated the BBC. They must be set free to broadcast their left-wing ideology, and we must not be made to pay. So I think that the subscription argument is really where the debate is at. You can like what they do on one side, Richard, but you would have to say, if you're J.K. Rowling, if you're that Gaza documentary. It's almost, I mean, that joke sitcom W1A or whatever, it rather sums up. They're just a bunch of virtuous... They talk to you, they look at you. Did you see Nick Robinson over the weekend? Anybody who disagrees with our brilliant output is a far-right activist. I mean, it's extraordinary that they don't believe the BBC, that they should be treated with the same, well, rules, if you like, and the light being shone as the rest of us. And they don't. They've got away with it for too long. You'd have to agree with that.
They have, absolutely, because of the dysfunction at the top, because of that degree of arrogance. There is an issue with the funding of news channels in that, for example, Sky News in 36 years has never, ever made a profit. Just think about that. Yeah. So BBC News has been sort of cosseted in a very complacent, decadent way by the fact that it's got permanent funding. It doesn't need to worry about it, so it can go off and do its own thing. And
but there's the argument. If you're not having to justify in terms of how many people click onto you if it's online or watch you if it's terrestrial, then you are free. And all the people who for years have gone, you're being a bit harsh on the BBC. I don't think so. I think there's an ideologically left-wing based theory in that organisation, and it's just this smugness. And yes, you're right, there are good programmes, but there's a lot of people, millions of people I suspect in this country, who really, really want to see change.
Here's the other key point, Jeremy, which is trust. And you know, some of the BBC in a sense is one of the foundations of being British, really. You know, we used to be able to trust the government, trust the police, trust the post office and trust the BBC.
Yeah,
and trust in all of those four things is seriously under threat, and that's very damaging for UK PLC.
Imagine that, the days of trusting the BBC and the police and the government and getting to see a doctor. Absolutely outrageous. Now, Richard, we need to chill here because this is, as if that wasn't bad enough, love to hear from people. This is the place the nation comes to talk. Apparently the Labour Party, and I'd like you to compliment them enormously, this morning we learned that the Labour Party's ideal of dealing with asylum seekers, this is a great story this morning, is really intelligent. They're going to give each asylum seeker £100 to leave the hotel, and their quote is, you can then go and try and stay with family or anybody else, and you can use that £100. So I just wanted to ask you and Reform a question. So if they've got family to live with and we're giving them £5,200 a year, why the bloody hell didn't they go and live with family in the first place? Or more than that, why did we let them in if they haven't got any family?
It's hard to believe this story, actually. It just sounds like more desperate measures to get through another weekend, another week. The bigger picture, Jeremy, is that I think some 2,000 illegals arrived over the 3 days, I think Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah. And there are thousands and thousands massing on the coast of northern France. So those who think, oh, it's going to stop soon because of the weather, whenever there's a break in the weather, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds are pouring across, and thousands more are massing, and it's very, very serious. It's very grim, and everybody is frankly terrified of the consequences.
Well, also over the weekend, and I was going to call you up, but I thought I'd let you have a peaceful Sunday, because the British government, Shabana Mahmood, has announced that they're looking with interest and I guess sort of slight envy at the Danish model, which is being quite strong on immigration, and that they're cozying up to them. And this particular report, in a left-wing thing that I was reading, said, it's interesting, however, since the Labour Party has started to come up with answers from Denmark, reforms had the carpet pulled from underneath its feet. Just watch the bubble burst. Did you read that? It's true.
Well, I did. I think the truth is Shabana Mahmood is rapidly realising she may be in the wrong party. I mean, because she's speaking a language that nobody else in the Labour Party is speaking or wants. So she might find herself fairly isolated pretty quickly. But it is true, Denmark has, they've achieved great success recently by being much tougher, as reform would be. And they've almost eradicated the problem.
It's really interesting. Shabana Mahmood, I mean, that'd be a one, wouldn't it? Shabana Mahmood defects to reform. The other thing, not that you've ever been anywhere near prison, I can't say I was particularly shocked by this story this morning. A Palestine Action protester who said to his bosses at Wandsworth Prison, there's a surprise on Friday, could I just go to my brother's wedding on Saturday? And they went, absolutely not a problem. If you go at 10, will you come back at 5? He hasn't returned. That's the third high-profile mistake. And look at Richard Tice, got his head in his hands. Prison release in the past 2 weeks. I honestly, I know they're all in for Lammy now. I mean, how he ever makes any... I can't have that. How embarrassing, Richard Tice, is it about this country in so many... I mean, a fiasco's one thing. This is beyond the pale, man. They might as well open the gates of every prison.
I'm going to try and be optimistic again. Maybe it was a very good wedding. Maybe he's sleeping it off, and he'll pop back this morning. I mean, it's so bad you have to laugh. Actually, it's just extraordinary.
Yeah.
What's the point of being in prison if you can just drift in and out to go to the odd party? I mean, the whole point of it is that it is a sanction.
Yeah.
It's a punishment, and you're going to miss the odd gig. That's the nature of it. I just absolutely beggars belief. It really does.
And to me, I mean, I probably sound like I'm spouting from your playbook, but I don't understand. I said this last week. You commit a crime and you get given 5 years. Well, as it is, you only have to do 3.5. Labour Party's idea of dealing with the prison overcrowding system is to let people out sooner, to commit more crimes, to put people back in who will then be released sooner. Forget building prisons or deporting foreign criminals. These people are... I don't know what they're thinking. It's just ridiculous in my mind.
Well, the real point is the number of accidental releases from prison, I think, has at least trebled in the last 12 months.
Wow. Since
the Labour Party took over the government. When you've got 80,000 people in prison, I guess the odd mistake may happen, the odd one. But the number has at least trebled in the last 12 months, I think. And of course, that follows on the very early release of lots of prisoners, hundreds of prisoners early when the Labour Party came into government. I've been saying ever since then, why do you just deport the 10,000 foreign national criminals clogging up our prisons, consuming hundreds of millions of British taxpayers' cash? Just send them all back to their homes.
But why not also build more prisons and go the other way and say, if I give you 5 years, you're serving 5 years. That's the punishment for the crime you've committed, and you're going to stay there to learn that crime doesn't work. We seem to wipe the backside of perpetrators now, Richard, and not favour victims. And I just don't get it. But I mean, I suppose if you are up in court today and you're listening to this, if you do get a custodial sentence, you've broken the law and you deserve it. But I guess you'll be hoping to go to HMP Wandsworth, which seemingly is quite possibly the worst prison ever.
And then give one of your relatives a ring and say, can you organise a wedding? And I'll pop along.
I want to take a moment, actually, on a serious note. I was speaking to Denny last night, and he was saying that in his village, he just walked down to the Remembrance Sunday, and how extraordinary the numbers were this year. And I was saying earlier that Oliver, my son, is in Squirrels, which is like Cubs, and he was carrying the flag yesterday, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people. And at a time when so much seems wrong ahead of Armistice Day tomorrow, I think it's really important that people understand. Did you see that interview with the veteran on GMB, Richard? I'm going to play it briefly because this sort of broke my heart. This is Alex Penstone, ladies and gentlemen.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Breaks my heart, that, Richard Tice. Yours as well, I'm guessing.
Totally. I mean, it was heart-wrenching, and it sort of exemplifies where the nation has fallen to. And I was at Boston War Memorial. We had an incredible service there. And amongst it all, some of the hope, the optimism that we do need to take forward was the quantity and brilliance of the cadets and also the scouts. I felt, from amongst the young, that was a real moment for me, very striking indeed. And then I went and looked at some of the villages, some of the the war memorials covered in wreaths and poppies was, you're right, the numbers are, I think, growing every Remembrance Sunday, and there is a sort of a depth of desire to thank and appreciate who we were, what we did, where we've come from, as part of saying, actually, we need to get back to being that incredible nation.
It's really interesting for me because we seem to have bred a generation of entitled people who don't understand our history, or our history is supposed to be obliterated or wiped out of our education for embarrassment in these new worlds. People like Alec Penstone and his colleagues are the only damn reason we are where we are today, and I think it is massively important that people understand that. Richard, thank you so much, my friend. A busy day ahead. 11 o'clock, you've got a press conference, Reform Today, about small businesses. The way to encourage them is not to levy huge national insurance on them, isn't it?
Absolutely, and all sorts of other daft regulations. So look forward to that. That'll be very important. And we're going to be talking consistently about the importance of small businesses for the UK economy, the millions and millions of them, the people they employ, and these ludicrous employment regulations and extra costs is making people say, why should I bother? And that's a catastrophe. So look out for that later.
Good man. Thank you so much indeed. The Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, MP for Boston and Skegness. 7:23 on Monday the 10th of November. You're waking up to the news that Donald Trump is apparently responsible for Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, finally falling on his sword last night, along with Deborah Turness, the head of the News Corporation Output. Davie, Slippery Davie, has held on through scandal after scandal. Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace, Martine Croxall, Bob Villan. But last night, he had to admit that they had deceived in their editing of Donald Trump's speech. The Donald says they're all fake news, they're all corrupt, and Davie's gone. We're asking the question this morning, is it time to defund the BBC? I thought Richard made some really good points there, which are there are good programmes. Maybe it is the news output, because I think everybody with a brain cell would say that the news output is leftist and it's wrong. Jay, good morning.
Morning, Jeremy. Fantastic show as always. Regarding the BBC, whether you pay your licence fee or not is another thing, but just don't give them the views. Don't give them the views. Don't switch on and watch their news, because you know it's could be edited and lied about. I mean, you've only got to look a few months back. They actually had to apologise to Nigel Farage. You can mention that to him when he comes on. The presenter actually had to apologise to him for, you know, again, inflaming tensions and coming out with comments that are not true, you know. So anyway, hopefully Nigel will speak to his friend Donald and they'll give the BBC a good shoeing. Bring back the old BBC, you know, the old Doctor Who, not the woke stuff, the old Only Fools and Horses, the old comedy days, when it was great. Make the BBC great again.
Is that possible? What do you think? It's where the nation comes to talk. It's 0344 499 1000. And also, I'll tell you what we're going to find out later as well. The numbers of convictions for people who didn't pay their licence fee. There are people in jail right now for not paying their licence fee. I'm not condoning any of that. What I'm saying is, and I take Richard's point, there are good programmes, but if your programmes are good, then people will pay to subscribe to your channel. Perhaps it's time for the BBC to stand on its own 2 feet. 7:25.
Big news coming this December. Our Talk TV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the Talk TV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, almost 7:30 Monday morning on the home of common sense and free speech. You're with Talk on the day after the day that Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, resigned after admitting the deceptive editing of Donald Trump's speech about the Capitol riots. Let's go straight to College Green. Andrew Griffith, Shadow Business and Trade Secretary. Andrew, oh no, he's indoors with two flags. Are you allowed to have them up, Andrew? Very good morning to you.
I'm very proud to have them up, particularly on a day that we're going to finally, I hope, get to grips with the BBC. It's institutional bias. It needs new leadership and fundamental reform. It's got to do a lot less. It's got to charge the taxpayer a lot less. And be a lot less biased.
It's really interesting. I mean, now all the right-wing journalists and all those people who self-perpetuate their ideology are saying Donald Trump is responsible for this. But this is a man, Tim Davie, that has presided over scandal after scandal, Andrew. Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace, Bob Villan. I mean, my views on anti-Semitism are so strong, and quite rightly. He was at Glastonbury, Davie, and allowed the streaming of that vile human being saying deaf to the IDF. Martin Croxall, a really great newsreader, was sanctioned by the BBC last week for daring to change the autocue from pregnant people to pregnant woman. The BBC is manifestly, in terms of its news output, it's wrong, it's biased. Does it need defunding in your mind? What do you think needs to happen to it?
Look, I think the BBC needs fundamental reform. It's not about any one individual, sadly. It's not just a question of just changing one or two faces at the top. It is institutionally biased. You just look at their coverage of Glastonbury, for example. They spend a huge amount of taxpayers' money. This is money extracted under the threat of sending people to prison. It's a festival for the left. They fly down endless executives and often left-wing politicians. It's falling coverage, and that's just one example. We've seen, obviously, in the Prescott files, exposure of a lot of institutional bias. But some of us have been saying this for decades. So this isn't about any individual. This is about a chance to fundamentally reform the BBC.
But do you? I will
do a lot less things.
I will
get back to basics.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I will push you on this, and I think it's a relevant thing. Richard Tice, I asked him, and I'll ask you: isn't it not time, in the market we're in, where people get their news online, when terrestrial television is on its backside, where one of the, I think in the last audience figure ratings, YouTube was nearly the #1 news channel. Is it not time to stop saying to this huge sort of mega organisation that's got its feet under the desk, that's used to being given 175 quid by every single person, no, you're in a different marketplace, you need to prove your worth? Because I absolutely take Richard Tice's point that strictly traitors and all that's good, but I think I should choose to pay to watch that, as I have to with everything else. I don't think I should be forced to pay to watch news that is biased. They shouldn't. I don't think they should get that money. I think the state broadcaster is supposed to be balanced, and it is not balanced in any way, Andrew, is it?
100% I agree with you, Jeremy. What we need is reform of the newsroom immediately. We need to have a glide path to a point where the BBC no longer extracts money under the threat of sending people to prison, so it becomes a choice. And in the meantime, the process has got to be for it to focus on doing far fewer things well. define what public service broadcasting is. I was on a panel that sought to do exactly that. Once you've got a slimmed down version of the very few things that we think public service broadcasting with absolute due impartiality consists of, then you can slim it down and move to a world of pure choice.
Now, I know you've got to move on. You're on the morning round. Can I ask you a most important question before you go? Are you being interviewed by the BBC this morning?
No, funnily enough, as a Conservative politician, every day we offer to go on the BBC, and most days they decline, and today is no exception.
Well,
so,
I think you should be very glad, because God knows
the BBC have got my number. They're very welcome to, unlike you, ask a question and let me answer without interrupting.
Well, the thing is, you should be glad you're not going on the BBC, Andrew, because it will probably be edited to make you say the complete opposite to what you actually think. Andrew Griffith, thank you very much indeed. In answer, by the way, to people asking me, convictions for licence fee evasion. Last year, 25,550 people were convicted. This is an important point. You cannot be sent to prison for licence fee evasion. I'm just giving you facts, but you can be jailed for failing to pay the resultant fine. I'm not condoning anything. What I do believe fervently is it is about time the BBC was forced to survive through the quality of its work, because I think they'd be terrified, because I think people will go, are you joking? Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. We'll head to London. Nick, you're on Talk Breakfast. How are you?
Yes, hello there, morning. The amazing thing about the BBC and Tim Davie is the whole thing could have been avoided by him at the outset, as soon as the story broke, saying, this is wrong, I'm going to look into this and find out what's happened and take appropriate action. And if it means retraining of people, then so be it. But what appeared to happen was they launched an inquiry. Why do you need an inquiry for something as obvious as this? And then sat on it for a while. It's always the cover-up rather than the act itself.
I mean, I would only take exception. I mean, not because people are thinking that I'm anti the BBC. I just don't like the fact that they don't have to justify their existence. But you said, this would have been different if Tim Davie had launched an inquiry. Tim Davie kept quiet about Edwards, Lineker, Wallace, Villan. He's never, ever made a decision, and I think it goes even beyond him. I think what Andrew Griffiths, I think the border each other's throats. I think there is I just think there's a way that they feel news should be reported. There's a story that says that they were forced to correct 2 Gaza stories, right? Every single week. They refused to have J.K. Rowling on a panel when you're trying to talk about the transgender issue. There is no doubt from the top down they have a philosophy, they have an ideology, and everybody dances to the tune. Even in his leaving statement, actually, Nick, he said, Tim Davie, this was my decision, and I remain incredibly thankful to the chair and the board for their unswerving and unanimous support throughout my entire tenure, including during recent days, which says to me that the chairman down think that Tim Davie's done a good job when patently he hasn't.
Yeah, fair point. And also, you're a previous commentator, Conservative minister.
Yeah.
Doesn't go on the BBC round. They'll all invite whoever. It should be obligatory that the government spokesman goes on, the opposition spokesman goes on. That should be compulsory almost in their charter, because they're the British Broadcasting Corporation, all of us. They're not part of Britain, the part that lives in North London. I'm using a stereotype. But, they're for all of us. And therefore, they should cater for all of us.
And they don't, Nick. Listen, I really take your point. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. Just to give you that news as well, the BBC chairman, Samir Shah, expected today to apologise, right, and provide further details on that edited speech by Donald Trump to the Culture, Media and Sport Committee. There is open revolt in the BBC newsroom we're here this morning over that rebuke to Martine Croxall. We'd love to hear what you think about it. I have to say, the response, phenomenal. The people who want to defend the BBC are saying, this is Donald Trump. This is Donald Trump. He's controlling the United Kingdom. Nothing about the fact that Davie and his left-wing cohort of journalists have decided that maybe it's time to do one. We're going to head to a break. Steve, you're not very happy this morning, son, are you?
Morning, Jeremy. This is Stephen Hart.
I've always said that Britain follows America about 5 years in lag. And if you look at Keir Biden, very much destroying this country in the way that his older brother Joe Biden did in America. And the result will be the same. We will have Nigel Farage instead of Donald Trump coming in to soothe the madness and to get things back on track. God bless, have a great day.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Monday morning, the 10th of November, 20 minutes to 8 o'clock. JK on Morning Glory on the day that Tim Davie has resigned as the Director General of the BBC. He's fallen on his sword. Has he, though? Sources. Who'd have thought, right, that I had sources at the BBC, but I do. Sources have just told us that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Trump happy. Let's go straight to the former Conservative Party leader, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. A very good morning to you, Sir Ian. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, very good, thanks.
Sources told me, and these are genuinely true sources, I can't tell you why, but they are, that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Trump happy. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's funny you mention it, because that was the first thought I heard of when he resigned. I thought, hello, they've lent on him because they're very worried about upsetting Trump. Now, I think, in truth, the resignation was necessary. Also, the resignation of the head of news. But the bit that I keep asking the question of, what about the producer, the person that put this programme together and oversaw the ridiculous and biased cut that took place? We've not heard anything about that individual or individuals. What's happening to them? I mean, it's all very well for people even higher up the chain who may or may not have known at all anything of this. But at the level where programmes are produced, this is where the BBC is falling down. It's falling down because nobody is standing back from that programming and saying to themselves, really? Does this look biased to you? Does this look unfair? Does this bit of cutting or trimming, does that look like it's setting up some kind of false story? Who the hell asks those questions before it goes out? You know, newspapers do it the whole time. You cannot get an article in a newspaper without the lawyers checking it over. I mean, many times I've had delayed publications, people weren't sure about a fact and they want to check it. Quite right, absolutely what you have to do. It seems to me at times the BBC doesn't do that in the sense that we need to get this out there, let's make sure every fact is correct here, and the filming was correct. That's where the whole thing collapses. It's like a badly run business, awash with cash, that actually simply doesn't understand what good journalism is too often all about. Good journalism isn't about fancy stuff, it's about getting your facts right and making sure they can be stood up. That failed across the board in this particular case, has failed earlier on. You talked about the poor person who's been harangued now for having changed the wording on the statement that they were about to make from pregnant people to pregnant, or pregnant person to pregnant woman.
Martin Croxall.
Last time I looked at it, I wasn't aware that a single male, biological male, is possible having a child.
Well,
so
we live in a different world,
sense.
you and I, Serene, honestly. But can I just say it in terms of what you said? I agree with you. However, if producers, commissioning editors, and I was in television long enough to know this, of course, on the floor, but don't ever let it be said that those above wouldn't be aware. And that is why so many people in this country have lost faith and believe it goes to the top. Samir Shah today, the chairman, is appearing before the Culture, Media and Sport Committee to apologise. But the fact of the matter is bosses in television networks will always say, oh, we didn't know about that. Patently, if you look back at what Davey has had to deal with, Hugh Edwards, Lineker, Wallace, Bob Villan, that Martin Croxall in the newsroom, J.K. Rowling, 2 stories a week corrected on Gaza. Yeah. You would have to look at that if you're an ordinary everyday person and go, this comes from the top, they've got an ideology, they have a message. And I thought Richard Tice actually made a really good point. There's plenty of programmes on the BBC that are very popular. Traitors, Strictly, to name but a few. But if you look at where we are today, and you know this better than anybody, people get their news from all sorts of different ways. And I think that there is a majority, I believe this, of people in this country who now think it is wrong that a channel gets to perform in the same pool but with a great advantage of this money, awash, as you said, with cash. I suspect if the BBC had to play on a level playing field, they would very quickly tighten up all those aspects of journalism you're talking about, because nobody would subscribe.
Yeah, I proposed a while back that if you had a licence fee at all, and that's a debatable issue, but let's assume for a second there was some kind of licence fee, what's its purpose? Its purpose really should be about news and current affairs. All the rest that the BBC does is commercial. And by the way, they do sell that stuff too, so they get the licence fee and they get the cash from what they sell, which was paid for by the licence fee. So my question was really, why, therefore, do we even pay any money towards making of commercial programmes?
Yeah.
Surely the licence fee could then be broken up amongst the terrestrial channels, all of them, so that they could spend their money, that money, on doing news and current affairs. That way you'd get a proper balance, because most of the news and current affairs is made at a loss. So for terrestrial channels, it's very important they get that. The rest is all commercial.
Yep.
So a large chunk of what they do could be out in the commercial market. They make good commercial programs. You know, you just named a couple of them. You know, they do very good period dramas. All that sort of stuff gets sold and is of good value. The news and current affairs bit is the bit where this all goes wrong, where they get an advantage because they don't have to advertise. And in down times in the economy, channels, you know, like ITV and yourself and others, they have to advertise, and that is very difficult. And so I would say just let that one be. If you're going to pay anything at all, you pay it towards the functioning of news and current affairs. The rest, frankly, which would diminish the money that gets from the taxpayer, as it were, to a much smaller degree.
And I mean, that's the point about news. Sky, 36 years. Your news output cannot be sponsored. It cannot, you know, it is to be a level playing field. But my argument about those programmes that are good is, if I want to watch Traitors or Strictly, if I want to watch it, I just believe that they are at... And I think if you step back, you go, so you're at this massive advantage where the money comes to you, or you get prosecuted if you're a person, and thus you've been allowed to almost get away with it for too long. Do you believe that the licence fee should change, Serene?
Oh, dramatically. I've been arguing about that for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And also the numbers that are employed at the BBC. I don't mean to give the BBC a good kicking, but the reality is that most commercial programs cannot afford the numbers of people making those programs that the BBC does.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the Today program the other day. How many people does it take to make the Today program? They've got more presenters than anybody else. I was looking at LBC, the dear old Nick Ferrari, who runs his program, like you do here, by himself for the whole of the morning, and he takes call-ins as well, which they don't do. But they take about 5 or 6 people to present that program. And my question is why, when every other commercial channel does it with 1 or 2 people regularly on that all morning? And that's the bit that really gets me, is that there's a sort of sense that, well, it doesn't really matter, we can do it this way because we've got the money. No commercial program would do that, paying people huge sums of money to do maybe 1 day, 2 days a week on a particular channel broadcasting. The same goes with back office staff. So my question really is, that you've raised, which is quite right, is there therefore institutional bias at times?
Yeah.
On an institution as large as this, as well financed as this, it's almost certain that there will be bias. Because what happens is there's a kind of me and you mentality that breaks out.
Yes.
We know best. We know what impartiality looks like. And nobody really checks that properly. So all the stuff to do with the trans issues and everything else was unbelievably and unfairly biased. People really couldn't get much of a hearing if they didn't agree with it. And eventually the tide broke on that one, and they've had to backtrack like mad. The same goes with foreign correspondents doing stuff, giving opinions endlessly rather than giving facts. And that should be where they would restrict it. No other organisation would do that. So I think the main thing to do is to say, look, there's one other issue too that happens. Lots of papers are in competition, and they have journalists that have to chase these stories, write them up, check them with lawyers, everything else. When they put them out there, the BBC is able to go and plunder those published stories, and they put them up on their website with no attribution at all as to where that came from, which paper, which journalist did it. So, you know, they get away with that, and therefore had a free-to-use website, which is fine, but no other newspaper can do that anymore because they need the revenue. So this is where the competition becomes unfair. And I think to that degree, even if you didn't have any ideological position on it, the reality is it is now a very unfair position in a very competitive media world. The UK is falling behind in that competition because commercial companies cannot compete with the big giants in America because for them, they've always got the BBC sitting on their shoulder.
Completely agree with everything you've said. Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much. As your former Conservative Party leader, making the point very, very properly that the BBC has an advantage in a different landscape. The world has changed and many of us feel, yes, there's plenty of good programmes, but the news output is biased. There is not the impartiality that we would believe a state broadcaster should have, and times should change. Just to repeat that news, breaking news that there are sources that have told us this is genuinely true at the BBC. So who'd have thought that? Sources have told us this morning at the BBC that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Donald Trump happy. That'll send those journalists, those left-wing journalists, over the edge. Donald, on Truth Social overnight, said the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, are quitting, fired because they were caught doctoring my very good speech of January the 6th. Thank you to The Telegraph, he says, for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election on top of everything else. They're from a foreign country, good Lord. One that many consider our #1 ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. So much to talk about. 0344 499 1000, your text to 87222. Soon I'll tell you what was the most watched programme on the BBC this year. You're going to tell me traitors. You're not right. Jane, good morning.
If we're going to speak about the BBC scandal and concentrate on Tim Davie, we need to look at people like Fiona Bruce, who, during question time, the whole audience is left-wing. She never lets any of the right-wing politicians finish a statement, or any of the right-wing guests, to be quite honest. And it's totally biased. That needs to finish, get scrapped, and she needs to go.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Sometimes on this show, I wish you could hear what goes on in the background. Good morning, welcome to Talks, where the nation comes to talk. We want to hear from you. You're waking up to the news that Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, has resigned. Sources telling this programme inside the BBC in the last half an hour that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Trumpy Trump happy. Very interesting. Listen, Tim Davie, I mean, impartiality, no. Institutional bias, yes. I mean, to us, to many of you as well responding, it's absolutely the right time for there to be massive change. More on that coming up, 0344 499 1000. I want to say a very good morning, very quickly, former Top Gear presenter Steve Berry. Welcome to Morning Glory, Steve-o.
Morning, mate. I was at the Beeb for 10 years, and everything you've said this morning, I would echo.
Really? Genuinely?
They recruit lots of very clever but very liberal lefty lobbies from Oxbridge, and 25, 30 years down the road, they're running the show. So guess what happens?
It's really interesting, actually, because we were talking just then to IDS about good programmes, Strictly, Traitors, Top Gear, to be fair, before you got rid of Clarkson and it all went wrong, not you. And actually, it is the news output. It is governed by this ideology. It isn't impartial. It is biased. And whether it's Davie or it goes higher, there's just scandal after scandal. We wanted to get you on this morning. I can't believe this. Motorist, Rachel Thieves, or Richard III, I don't quite know where we've got a picture of Hugh Edwards, but there we go. Richard III, Rachel Thieves, has the budget, of course, coming up on November the 26th, and she's blatantly going to charge us all for many things just to line her own pockets. Is this story true? Motorists are to be taxed for driving in France under Reeves's pay per mile plan. Steve Berry, tell me this isn't true.
What's going to happen in time is that we're all going to have one of those black boxes that they force on young people. Yeah. You've got kids about the same age as, I don't know, yours might be younger. Mine are all sort of late 20s, early 30s.
35 to 1, mine.
Yeah, they've had to have this black box in the car. Well, we're the same age. They've had to have this black box in the car that spies on them all the time so they can get a reasonable insurance premium. Wow. That's what the insurance companies want. That's what DVLA want. That's what the government wants. They want us all to have a box in the car which tells them where we've been and when we've been, and they want to send us a bill at the end of the month. And that's what's going to happen. But the last thing, mate, the last thing they want to do is admit that, because we are going to hate it. But that's the way it's got to be, because collecting the revenue on petrol and diesel was absolutely one of the best things they ever thought of. Because like alcohol and tobacco, you pay before you use the thing. Mm-hmm. You pay when you buy 20 snouts. You pay when you buy a pint of bitter. You pay when you buy a litre of diesel or petrol before you use it. But as we go over to electric cars, which they keep telling us we've got to have, they keep putting the date off because they keep dreading losing all that lovely revenue.
And not because the majority of people want to buy electric cars. Talking of which, my friend, and you know that we wish we had longer, it's just like that on a breakfast show. Nobody better than you to just briefly talk about former Top Gear presenter, colleague of yours, Quentin Wilson, who's died, we heard over the weekend, after a very short illness. We were told this on Saturday, he was 60. I interviewed him many times. Top man.
Knowledgeable, informed, old school BBC, to inform, to educate and entertain. That's what Quentin was. Perhaps the BBC could remember that. Do you know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more. He was always so... I mean, he liked electric cars, so we tended to disagree. He believed that they were the future, to be fair. And he'd be laughing now if he heard me saying this, right?
Yeah, he would. But the thing about Quentin as an advocate of electric cars was people couldn't use that argument that he wasn't a petrol head. No bigger petrol head, but also somebody who saw what was coming and knew that it was unavoidable, so decided to kind of embrace it in a way. Do you know what I mean?
I do,
and
mate.
Advocate, he saw the difficulties of our transition. Mate, we've been using internal combustion for nearly 150 years. It's going to be a very difficult transition. But while a lot of people sort of were in denial about it, Quentin, you know, admitted that it was coming. And do you know what as well I remember about him?
You got 30 seconds, kiddo.
He was just funny. This is what... Not a lot of people have said this. Yeah, he was very knowledgeable. Yes, he was very informed. But he was one of the funniest people I've ever worked with.
I always thought with Quentin, he would laugh at himself. Steve Berry, former Top Gear presenter of the BBC. Thank you very much indeed. Almost 8 o'clock. We're live across the UK. The BBC in turmoil. Tim Davie has resigned. Migrants are being given 100 quid to leave migrant hotels. It's all going on. We want you involved. This is Talk. More after the news at 8, which is next on Morning Glory.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good morning, my friends. Welcome along. It is Monday, the 10th of November. You would Talk, the home of free speech, where the nation comes to talk. We want to involve you in the next couple of hours of Morning Glory. You're waking up to the news that the BBC is in turmoil. Late last night, Tim Davie, the Director General and the head of news, its corporate head of news, Deborah Turness, who'd come from ITV 3 years ago, resigned over what's called the deceptive editing of Donald Trump's speech. In the last half an hour, exclusively to Morning Glory, we have had from sources inside the BBC confirmation, genuine fact here, that the government allegedly lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Donald Trump happy, which, of course, they'll all jump on now and go, oh, my God, it's Donald Trump, he's calling the shots. No, the truth is, let's be perfectly honest, right? The BBC, and I thought in the last hour, so many people, Richard Tice, Andrew Griffiths, got it absolutely right. Growing up, the BBC was something that you watched, you went to. The first port of call, if you like, for those important news stories. Yes, the great programmes as well, but it was sort of... It was that institution that you could trust, that you felt comfortable with. What it's done, in my humble opinion, over the years is become so used to that, so used to being funded by us, the British taxpayer, without having to be answerable to the British public, that it's recruited, as Steve Berry said, the ex-Top Gear presenter just then, a whole host of liberal left-wing lovies who have their own agenda. And when you look at what's happened to the BBC, you know, you think about the scandal surrounding Hugh Edwards, a paedophile who should be in prison, and we're still paying his pension. Gary Lineker on £1.5 million a year to present sport, pontificating about Gaza and shutting his brain to everything else. You think about Bob Villan. The Director General of the BBC was at Glastonbury whilst that lowlife was allowed to stand on stage, streamed and shout, deaf, deaf to the IDF. Now, whatever you think of the conflict, that is blatant anti-Semitism, and there is no way the BBC would have behaved in the same way in anything else. We hear about that. Remember that Hamas documentary about what was going on, and we turned out it was voiced by a Hamas official's son. For me, the BBC isn't what it was. It's not trustworthy, it's not impartial, it's biased in its output. And I don't know what you think, I'd love to hear from you. I don't think there's a way back for the BBC. I think the BBC needs to be brought to task, defunded and made to, if you like, paddle in the same waters as the rest of us. And basically, if your output's good, strictly, traitors, I'll buy it. If your news is biased, I'm not going to. Let's just remind ourselves of what brought Tim Davie down. This was, firstly, the panorama speech that Donald Trump allegedly made. Now they're saying, we edited it, we're very sorry. The second bit proves that. Have a watch, have a listen.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
That is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, we want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Derek in Newell says, Jez, I'm embarrassed, I'm angry, I'm disgusted and appalled at having to pay for the lies and deceit that this abhorrent and so-called national broadcaster is allowed to get away with. And don't get me started on my true feelings over all the scandals the BBC have allowed to get away with again and again. I truly believe that the only reason he has been persuaded to go away is because so many people have woken up to the fact that they are not happy to be paying their licence fee for that sort of information. We told you earlier, by the way, that last year 25,550 people were convicted for not paying their licence fee, and I'm not sitting here condoning anything like that. But you can only be jailed, I'm told here, factually, if you don't pay the resultant fine. I think the BBC's in dire, dire trouble. We say a very good morning to Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. How are you?
Good morning. Well, I'm still getting used to seeing you at this time in the morning.
Well, there's an answer to that, but I'm not doing it on national radio. The BBC, many people are saying to me this morning, you're gloating, Kyle. No, I'm not gloating. I grew up believing in the BBC, watching the BBC, adhering to the BBC. I think what it's become is a national embarrassment. And as I just said, I think they should be playing on the same field as the rest of us, and I believe it is time for major decisions. I know the chairman, Samir Shah, today appearing in front of the Common Select Committee on Culture, Media and Sport and apologising, but yesterday was the end of the road. But I'd love your response to the sources that told us in the last half an hour that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign to keep Trump happy, Isabel.
Well, I'm sure there was some kind of conversation or conversations to that effect, but it was very clear to everybody that Tim Davies' position was untenable. And, you know, in terms of gloating, you know, all of us who work for other media outlets that don't have the benefit of taxpayer funding, a kind of, you know, unlimited checkbook to do whatever you like and send hundreds of people to Glastonbury and then force the nation to listen to death to the IDF. Of course, we are right to hold the BBC to the highest possible standards, because this isn't a level playing field, as we've been saying all morning. But I don't think I feel in any way gloaty this morning, because I'm afraid we're going to be stuck with the BBC for a fair bit longer. It's inconceivable that this Labour government is going to defund the BBC, is going to radically change the licence fee system. I'm afraid people will have to wait for another government for that kind of radical change. What we can hope is that this is a huge wake-up call to the corporation, and that they put new systems in place to begin to address some of the absolutely institutional bias that they have on quite a range of issues.
I wanted to play the clip that's really the most important clip of all. Martine Croxall is a female news reader. I've actually met Martine. She's cool. I mean, apparently there's an open revolt in the newsrooms of the BBC. She happened to be reading a news autocue one day, and it said pregnant people. Everybody needs to see this. She dared to change it to pregnant women and got censured by the BBC. Have a watch, people, have a listen.
London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine has released research which says that nearly 600 heat-related deaths are expected in the UK. Malcolm Mystery, who is involved in the research, says that the aged, pregnant people, women, and those with pre-existing health conditions need to take precautions.
I salute her, Isabel, because I've never met a pregnant man. Thoughts?
I'd have done exactly the same in her position. And look, I think this is a cross that we have to die on. Sorry. But no newsreader should be made to recite such absolute twaddle. There's no such thing as pregnant people. There are only pregnant females, pregnant women. And she was quite right to do that. And I'm actually quite heartened that there is a revolt going on in the BBC about this, because it does suggest that perhaps there are more sensible people in there than I thought. I would say, just from a perspective with my international hat on, the BBC is a brand that is worth saving, I think. You know, all over the world, it is still held in very, very high regard. And what is so troubling about this particular scandal is that it is now, because of the Trump involvement, because Trump plays a central role in this, this actually damages the BBC and the good name of the corporation all over the planet. And that is qualitatively different to, you know, relatively domestic rows about Gary Lineker or Hugh Edwards. Those are serious matters, and particularly the Hugh Edwards thing. But this is of a different level. You know, this actually reminds me of the crisis over the so-called dodgy dossier. You know, it really rocked the BBC to its foundations, and this is similar. So change needs to be quick, it needs to be decisive, and the corporation needs to show us how it is going to be different going forward, until such time as perhaps another government comes in that looks at it entirely differently.
It's really interesting, actually. You talk about, with your international hat on, you're dead right. It was always held in the highest regard. I would respectfully suggest, because I'm going to play the best clip of the morning, I think this woman should one day stand. Caroline Levitt, the press secretary for Donald Trump. I mean, unlike politicians or commentators in this country who just mess around, they never get to the point. This is Caroline Levitt with her opinion of the BBC back in June. This is brilliant, Isabel. Have a listen, have a watch.
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them, because unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak, unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines. They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh, okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front.
How brilliant is she, Isabel Oakeshott?
Well, she is absolutely brilliant, but she touches on something that's been sort of bothering me for a while. I think this bias that we only look at in terms of English language output is actually a lot more serious than perhaps you and I realise. I was contacted by an Israeli journalist quite recently who often contributes to BBC in Arabic, and he said that the bias on the Arabic channels is so much more than anyone realizes in the UK. And why? Well, because most of us don't speak Arabic. But I think there's a whole other scandal there potentially about what the Arab world is hearing from the BBC and whether that is balanced reporting. And I fear that it very much is not.
It's really interesting. Andy in Preston says this BBC episode is the perfect opportunity to have a wholesale audit of their channels and output. I'd start by closing BBC Verify, looking at BBC Arabic, BBC Asian Network, BBC Local and National Radio. He agrees with you that this is a fundamental moment to look at it and say, as we've been saying all morning, Isabel, you want your state broadcaster to be unbiased. You want it to be impartial and straight down the middle. That isn't happening. There seems to be did you see Nick Robinson on the Today programme over the weekend just condescending, you know, anybody who criticises this amazing organisation is a far-right thug. They label people who dare to criticise them as the same people Gary Neville said, middle-class white men put up flags. I think the British public have tired of the BBC almost being given a free pass, and I think it's time that they understood that they should be brought to order. Other stuff in the news, though, I can't wait to throw this at you. I don't want you to fall off your chair. Shocked. Breaking news story this morning that the Labour Party's idea, well, they've got a great idea to deal with tax-funded immigrant hotels, OK? They're going to, Isabel Oakeshott, take a breath. Asylum seekers are going to be given £100 a week to leave under plans by ministers. Apparently they're going to be given 100 quid and told, why don't you go and live with a family member or a friend? To which I would respectfully say, if you've got a family member or a friend, why the hell didn't you go there in the first instance? And why are we not just spending that money on deporting these people or not letting them set foot into our country because they are here illegally?
This is totally the wrong answer to this ongoing catastrophe. The problem isn't how do we accommodate these people once they get to the UK. The problem is let's stop them getting here in the first place. You know, stop answering the wrong questions. Deal with the issue. You know what I find ever more bewildering about this? Keir Starmer could stop the boats tomorrow if he wanted. In fact, he could stop the boats this afternoon if he wanted. I don't care for all this, oh, it's all impossible, it's all too difficult. Let him just do it and let's see if the sky falls in. Guess what? The sky would not fall in. We don't overnight turn into Russia or North Korea or Yemen. We're still the United Kingdom with respect for human rights. The whole situation isn't just going to blow up because we stopped some boats. It's time to fall out with the French, frankly. Yes. They are massively taking the mickey. Let's bring this to a head.
Let's fall out with the French. Other news, and again, shocking, please don't fall off your chair. A Palestine Action protester who decided to approach the bosses of HM Wandsworth, Her Majesty's Prison Wandsworth, or His Majesty's Prison Wandsworth on Friday and say, would it be all right if I went to my brother's wedding on Saturday? He went, yeah, we'll let you out at 10. Can you come back at 5? He went, yeah, absolutely fine. He hasn't returned in a shocking story. That's 3 high-profile mistaken prison releases in the past 2 weeks. There's much that I used to be proud about this country. There's a lot now that embarrasses me. I mean, if you get nicked and you go to court, try and get sent to Wandsworth Prison, because they might as well have their bloody front gates open, shouldn't they?
I mean, there's a great cartoon in one of the papers over the weekend of a judge sentencing a defendant, and the speech bubble was, neither of us know how long you'll be in prison for. It could be any time, couldn't it? Maybe you'll be let out tomorrow, maybe it'll be in a month's time. What an absolute joke.
I just wanted to finish, as I have done with everybody this morning, and I know you're abroad, but I know, like me, you're a patriot. I was speaking to Denny, our boss, yesterday, and he was saying that he'd popped down into his village to the Remembrance Sunday service, and he couldn't believe the numbers of people, the increase in the last couple of years. And my young son Oliver carried the flag. He's in the Cubs, the small Cubs, the Squirrels, and there were hundreds yesterday, Isabel. And I just wanted to say this to people because there's so much about this country that we moan about, and one of the things that really infuriates me is that we seem to have a generation now that don't look back and say thank you. Did you see that veteran Alec Penstone on GMB the other day about the Remembrance Day? I want to play this because I think this is so upsetting. Have a listen, have a watch, guys.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Breaks my heart, that. Isabel, Armistice Day tomorrow, the 11th of November, the day my mother was born. Should not our country spend less time defending perpetrators of crime and justifying its existence and actually stand up for the very people who put us where we are, like Alex Penstone?
You know what? I really feel sick watching that. I watched it. I've watched it twice. When you just played it again there, it literally made the hairs on the back of my neck go up. It's just, there's something so profoundly distressing about a 100-year-old man who gave the greatest he could to our country and watched friends and comrades die. And he now says, for what? No wonder he says that. We are being invaded. I don't use that word lightly. I'm not saying the people who are coming across the channel have ill intent, but the reality is we are allowing an awful lot of people to come into our country who do not share our values. That is what I think he was talking about. There may well be other things, but I think that's what he was talking about.
To the detriment as well, and I think, just to sum it up, I think that so much of the frustration now, and I use the phrase indigenous population, some people get upset. I think it is deplorable that men and women that have put their lives on the line for our country are on the streets. I think it is deplorable that people who have paid their stamp for so long are not able to see a doctor or a dentist. I think it is deplorable that older people can't afford to heat their homes. And the list goes on. And what happens is this country that was always a modicum of fairness and doing the right thing, many millions of people are now going, yeah, we've always been able to do that, but right now I can't see a doctor and I can't see a dentist and my mum is freezing cold, and can you explain to me why we're skint and we're still giving to others and not to our own? And that is not far right. That is absolutely justifiable. Isabel Oakeshott, thank you so much. I mean that. Really lovely to have you on as ever, Talk's international editor. So don't forget the main news story. Tim Davie has resigned as the Director General of the BBC. Hurrah! Institutional bias, in my opinion, yes. Impartiality, no. And sources, who'd have thought I could say this, told us on this show from inside the BBC in the last hour that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Trump happy. So many of you with opinions. Oh, my God. I'll read some in a tick. We're going to go to a break. Pete, what do you make of the BBC, my friend?
Morning, Jeremy. Pete from Lincolnshire. Regarding the BBC and the fake Trump broadcast that they've put out, plus all the other things, what they should be forced to do is play an apology at the top of every newscast for the same number of weeks as that they've put out those fake broadcasts. So if that panorama broadcast has gone out over, say, 3 months, at the top of every newscast for the next 3 months, not just national newscasts, but also regional, they should be forced to play an apology and set the record straight. Great show. Cheers.
would call me a racist and a fascist and far right. But what's happening now is all those people that were on the left a decade ago, 20 years ago, they're getting sexually harassed, they're having their phones stolen, they're getting beaten up, and they're coming around to our way of thinking. This has gone far too far, and I'll tell you what the proof will be in the pudding is the next chance that the British majority get to vote. So every election up until the general election, people in their swathes are going to vote for reform.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Morning and welcome back. Morning Glory is on between now and 10 o'clock. This is JK. Thanks for tuning in today. So much to talk about in terms of this story with the BBC. Tim Davie resigning. Deborah Furness, the head of news, resigning. It's on the front of the Sun. Apparently, and this is really interesting, sources tell us at the BBC in the last hour that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Trump happy. We'll get some calls in, we'll get some texts in just a tick. Don't forget, more of you listening than ever before. This is where you come to talk, OK? We'll give you the chance to be part of it. Hello to Liz in Southampton. JK, the BBC should no longer have the power to convict or penalise the public for non-payment of its licence fee. In my eyes, there's a whole lot more crime going on in the UK that needs addressing. BBC, home of fake news. See? You see? Talk. Home of free speech and common sense. BBC fake news, says Liz in Southampton. Tim Hutton, why did the BBC refer to the Trump editing as a mistake? A mistake is something that is done unintentionally. Tim Davie has resigned. Now everyone that had anything to do with that Panorama episode needs to be sacked instantly. Morning, Jez. Oh, look at this. I enjoy Bargain Hunt at lunchtime. Don't know where this has come from, but don't want to watch now because they keep showing COVID episodes that were 5 years ago. Right, OK, so nothing, Jane, about the biased or lack of impartiality, just the fact the Bargain Hunt is showing repeats from 5 years ago. Looking dapper today, Jeremy. Bless you, Jane. Specsavers is the answer. Paula Young, not to be confused with Paul Young, living in the... Don't start. If the government want us all to stop driving, there needs to be substantial improvement of our public transport system. This is the fact. This is brilliant, by the way. I know it's slightly off cue, but I'm going to tell you. Labour councils have spent £35,000 on LBGTQ plus glass, whatever it is, zebra crossings. This is a fact to... But there's a picture. We're going to have, yes, lovely Pride zebra crossings to make it all inclusive. They cost 35 grand. The same council say we're not dealing with fly tipping and you're going to have to wait 103 years for potholes. So your cars will be screwed up, but that's the way it is. Hello to I Hate the BBC. We don't pay for a TV licence, we don't watch any BBC programmes, but it also means we're not allowed to watch any live TV at all, including talkTV or any other news channels. We listen to you on the radio instead, but surely this is unfair. It might well be, so what you need to do is download the new app, OK? talkTV app. You can get it, don't ask me how, but it's brilliant. And from December the 1st, it will all be Talk. Look, it's coming up. Look at that. Look at the brilliance, right? Download the Talk app by Monday, the 1st of December. That's a tick from Ricky. Get the app. It's utterly brilliant. Well sold, Jez. Nigel Brown. Morning, Jez. The BBC is no longer an institution. Too many people have moved beyond its offerings. It has caused division on so many issues, and now it has been forsaken, just like the Conservative and Labour parties. Once something great is broken, it's time to move on. 8:29. We're live across the United Kingdom. Let's say a very good morning to the Sun's deputy political editor, Ryan Saby. How are you, Ryan?
Good morning, Jeremy. All well?
Yeah, absolutely inundated with all of this news. Front page of your amazing newspaper today, all about the Tim Davie resigning. We'll talk about Rod Liddell's excellent comment in a minute. I just wanted you to react to the fact that I outscooped you, Dave Saby. I got an exclusive from the BBC in the last hour, genuine sources inside telling us that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Donald Trump happy. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I can completely see this happening. It'd be like a scene in the thick of it over the weekend in government. Take you back to Friday evening, you had that great scoop by my colleague, Harry Cole, out in Washington, D.C., and he had spoken to the White House Deputy Press Secretary. The Press Secretary had also spoken about, in their horror, their anger at what the BBC had done. And you can just imagine panic stations across government, Downing Street. They wouldn't have known what to do, how to react. How do we deal with the BBC? How do we deal with the White House? And how do we react just to calm this down? And I think if anyone was going to go, someone's head would have to roll for this. And I think the easiest one sort of lever to pull would be to see Tim Davie. It almost seems like it was, leaning up against an open door, because Tim Davie had been through so many controversies over the last few years. Glastonbury, Hugh Edwards, the BBC newsreader pregnancy sort of statement that she made. It just seemed like the final straw. But yeah, no, congratulations on that scoop. Because
the thing is, whilst I'm sort of delighted, and I make no apology for that finally the institutionalised bias of the BBC News output has been absolutely put front and centre. Donald Trump on Truth Social saying the top people, including Tim Davie and the boss, are all quitting because they were caught doctoring my very good speech of January the 6th. Thank you to the Telegraph, he says this morning, for exposing these corrupt journalists. They are dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. He goes on to say, on top of everything else, they are from a foreign country, one that many consider our number one ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. The only thing that slightly irritates me, and you touched upon it, Ryan, is that Tim Davie has survived scandal after scandal. And as Rod says on page 10 today, the Beeb execs lived in a bubble thinking it was all tickety-boo. I think the big frustration for many of us is that the BBC, that used to be a paragon of impartial, it was just great, right? Has become this monster that justifies its own existence and goes out following whatever ideology it wants to follow. And it's a shame it's taken Trump. It's a shame that when Hugh Edwards couldn't be pressed by Tim Davie to give us back his pension, the paedophile, still walking free, that wasn't enough, because, of course, all the Nick Robinsons of this world will now jump up and down and go, it's Donald Trump that's now controlling Great Britain. That's my issue with it, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing on all the scandals, whether it's Glastonbury or Hugh Edwards or MasterChef, whatever it well may be, I think to actually make a difference at the BBC, it had to be existential. And I think this is one of those issues. Once you get the US president getting involved in a story, things are going really badly. And I think I take you 2 years forward to 2027, when that licence fee and those renegotiations with the government, charter renewal, all comes up for grabs. There's real big questions about the licence fee. Now, that is a major source of funding, £3 billion that goes to the BBC to make programmes online, all the rest of it. That is money the British public have to pay if they want to receive that service. Now they're going to have to think about their funding model. And I think this will focus minds and sharpen minds about what their next steps are and how the organisation goes forward over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Couldn't agree more. Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor of The Sun. Thank you very much indeed. Tim Davie is on everybody's mind. Ian, good morning.
Hi, Jeremy. It's Ian from East Grinstead. Following on from this Tim Davie, let's just wait and see what his golden goodbye is going to be, how many thousands of pounds he'll walk off with. Because I'll tell you what, I bet he walks off with something.
So many people to get involved in this story this morning on the Tim Davie resignation, what it means. Delighted now to be joined by the former Culture and Media Secretary under Boris Johnson. Nadine Dorries, it's been too long. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning.
You're smiling like I'm smiling. This is extraordinary. And we're just saying to Ryan Saby, It's taken this. It's taken Donald Trump, who, of course, is being slammed by the Liberals this morning. He's now controlling our media. But sources told us genuinely, Nadine, in the last hour that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Trump happy. I suppose it doesn't matter, but to me it's slightly annoying that there's been scandal after scandal and the BBC seems to have got away with it for too long.
Yeah, and that's... So that story that you've got, that the government lent on Tim Davie, that would have been via Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary. I just find that scenario really hard to understand, but because it would be obvious that that story would leak. But also it makes it about Donald Trump, and it isn't about Donald Trump. It's about one catastrophic failure after another. You know, Savile, Hugh Edwards, the Jewish children on the school bus, you can go all the way back to Bashir and Diana and remember the Queen, the doctored video with the Queen, where the BBC the executive had to stand down because he'd actually done exactly what had happened with the most recent video, the Trump video. They'd spliced and doctored to make it look like the Queen was saying something completely different. I can't actually remember his name now.
Peter Fincham.
As him, Fincham. So it's one catastrophe after another. It's not Trump. Trump is just the final straw that broke the camel's back. But actually what's happening is that Trump is becoming the story, and that's just wrong. And, you know, Trump's Trump, and he will take the credit for it, as you would expect him to. But it kind of dilutes, and it gives the left a whole angle of attack, which is, this is about Trump controlling the media. It isn't about Trump. It's about catastrophic failings of the BBC.
And do you know what? I really agree with you. I was watching that odious Nick Robinson, and if he wants to take me on, he can, at the weekend, saying, you know, what's so wrong about this is that we're a national broadcaster. It's very hard. Yes, mistakes are made. But what's happening is this is the far right trying to control the narrative. And I will put to you, I'm going to ask you, you were the Culture and Media Secretary under Boris Johnson. What were the BBC like to deal with? Because they seem to me to be not even a law unto themselves. I don't know the best way to put it, Nadine, but unanswerable to anybody, believe in their own hype. Everybody else's opinion is irrelevant and we know best. Would that be a good analogy?
And you know what was extraordinary? It was absolutely extraordinary. You've just hit the nail on the head. It was almost like so as politicians and as Culture Secretary, I was held to account on so many levels and so many ways daily, quite often by people like you and BBC journalists who were exacting in their questions and forcing me to be accountable for every decision I took. And not just that, every offhand comment that I would make or any statement that I would make was torn apart, examined, and I had to account for myself in interviews like this. If I tried to hold the BBC to account, if I tried to get the BBC to explain anything, it was impossible. It was like, we're above that. Our job is to hold you to account, not the other way around. Yeah. And my argument was, well, people are paying a regressive tax for which they're criminalised for watching television. If they don't pay it, you are accountable. You do have to explain yourself. There was this groupthink, this mindset, we are above reproach, you cannot touch us, we are the BBC. And that is why I think the future of the BBC now is in question. And I'm very concerned because I think the Trump argument will take all the heat and the light and all the oxygen out of this debate. Because what is important is, how does the BBC look in the future? And for me personally, I felt this since I was Culture Secretary, and I still maintain it today, that the news division needs to be decoupled from the rest of the BBC. Yep. It needs paring right back to core values of reporting in an impartial and fair way. And somebody said to me, but in fact, it was the interview I've just done before you, which was, but that's impossible because we live in a digital age and there's so much context. And I put the question back, but you do it, and you do it, Jeremy. You know, there are no complaints about talk radio or talk TV or other broadcasters to the same degree as there are for the BBC. It is possible to report the news in a fair and impartial way. It's just the BBC that don't seem to be able to manage it. And that's why the news division needs to be completely cut away from the BBC, pared back to its core values of reporting just the news. No big star names, no corruption, of doctoring stories and none of this, just
No
reporting the
paedophiles,
facts in the
maybe, or
news.
paedophile pensions might be a
Well,
start.
isn't it extraordinary, how the Newsnight, there's Jimmy Savile affair covering up for a paedophile, Hugh Edwards,
Yeah.
BBC executives covering up for a paedophile. What was going on there?
I find it extraordinary. Like you, and that's what I sort of gathered over the weekend, and I want to make the point today. The sort of Nick Robinson approach that the far right, that the rhetoric will be, this is all about Donald Trump. No, it's not. It's actually and should be about a debate as to whether the BBC is impartial, news-wise. No. Is it institutionally biased? Yes. Does it have an ideology? Yes. Now, in a marketplace where, you know this, that's better than anybody, but in a marketplace where we have to survive in terms of who watches, listens, buys our books, whatever you want to say, I think it is an unlevel playing field. What makes it worse is that unlevel playing field in the BBC's favour has meant that they have become more biased and more left-wing and more liberal and more self-perpetuating. So for me, I agree with you, and many have said it, strictly, Traitors, whatever. I'd still make it a subscription service, because if I want to watch Traitors or whatever it is, then I should like everybody else. But the BBC's news, I suspect they would be terrified. And I know Deborah Turness, and yeah, she said she'd provide the most unbiased news coverage, my backside. The truth is, if the BBC became subscription service, Nadine, you and I both know their money would be absolutely stripped bare, because the British public would go, I'm not buying this anymore.
Yeah. Well, of course, Deborah Turner's brought in BBC Verify, and that was her. So she was telling one story.
Yeah.
And Panorama, I have to say, just a few weeks ago, they have had a number of complaints. 2 journalists on Panorama who've written a book about Lucy Letby produced a Panorama programme to back the publication of their book, which came out on the day their book was publicised. I mean, that's how deep the abuse within the BBC goes, particularly with Panorama. I mean, it's quite unbelievable, actually. If you went to talk and said, look, I'm bringing a book out, I want Talk to produce a whole programme which talks about my book and puts my point of view forward, they say, we can't do that. That's completely against editorial guidelines and standards. We can't do that. But Panorama do, and the problems are incredibly deep. And I think it's happened since they took news reporting into a central focus, which then means it has to go out through a number of filters. And it's the number of filters which have given bodies of individuals within the BBC control over the news and how it's presented to us, which is why over the past few years, since Deborah Turness arrived at the BBC, it's got so much worse. She talked to talk, which was BBC Verify, and I'm going to make the most impartial news blog. She talked to talk, but actually she didn't walk the walk. She did completely the opposite. And it was that mindset of we're untouchable that enabled that to happen.
Let me ask you one thing. This is actually David in Portsmouth, which is a really interesting question. He said, and this isn't a criticism, but he makes a good point, because we hear nowadays that there's so much that politicians want to do and can't. His question is, with the majority of 80 seats and the new culture secretary, why is it? It's a bit like the Blob in Whitehall. We hear this, don't we, a lot. Why were you not able to say to the BBC, I'm the culture secretary, I'm democratically elected, I've got a big majority, you'll do what I damn well say. We have the same, as I say, in the Blob. How is it so difficult?
We don't have that authority. So the BBC operates under a royal charter. We have no authority until the royal charter comes up for renewal. Wow. Yes, and they knew that, which is why the meetings were just, I pretended at meetings, they were just a farce. So, I mean, the only thing I could do with the BBC, the powers, the levers that I did have, I don't know if you remember, but I froze the BBC licence fee for 2 years. That caused a huge uproar within the BBC. I felt the most heat as a culture secretary at that point when I froze the BBC licence fee. I also said that when the charter came up for renewal, I did the midterm review, came up towards the midterm review. I also said that there will be no more BBC licence fee, and we were going to launch a review into how the BBC could be funded. The biggest backlash I got to that was from Conservative MPs. So make no mistake, anybody who thinks that Conservative MPs are a group of MPs who want to see the BBC reformed in any way. They do not. I got the most massive backlash for Conservative MPs, and I really felt the heat then, and so did Boris Johnson, from people complaining to the Prime Minister about what I was doing with the BBC. So it's it's not just the left, it's Conservative MPs as well. And it's one of the reasons why I joined Reform. Reform is the only organisation. I mean, Nigel Farage has been the same thing over and over again for, 25, 30 years. It's the only organisation that I believe that I could put my trust into to do something with organisations, because like the BBC and Channel 4 and others, because they are the last two pillars which are upholding socialism within the UK. And both of them need to be taken down. And it was fascinating to me that as Culture Secretary, my own party, I launched a review into the licence fee. I was told by Rishi Sunak and the Treasury, the licence fee is not your department, that's tax, that's the Treasury's department. You cannot do anything about the licence fee. So in answer to your caller's question, it was Rishi Sunak that stopped a review into the licence fee because he told me that was tax policy and I was standing on his turf by doing that, and yet I was Culture Secretary.
Wow.
So it was a mess.
Fascinating. Final question, a yes or no. Do you think the BBC will be defunded?
No, Labour will never let that happen. The only way the BBC had a chance of being defunded would be under a Nigel Farage government. That's the only way. And, I'm not saying that Nigel Farage would do that. I think he and I still have to have more conversations about this. But it's the only chance this country has of having true and fair, impartial reporting from organisations like yourself and others is if the BBC is defunded. And I would cut it loose. I would separate news from drama, entertainment and education. I would make that a subscription service. I would make it all a subscription service, but I would divide it out so that the news became a separate entity on its own. It had two men, two women leading those organisations, because to have one Director General overseeing all of it is impossible. It's too huge an organisation.
Listen, so good to have you on. Former Culture Secretary and author Nadine Dorries, thank you very much indeed. And on the subject of Nigel Farage, would he defund the BBC if he became the next Prime Minister? He'll be on this show after 9 o'clock to answer that very question. It's Morning Glory, just on 9:15.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I said to you earlier on Morning Glory, would you ever guess what the most watched BBC programme in 2025 so far is? I would say that 80% of you responded with traitors, several with Strictly Come Dancing. No, 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 my friends. Where did that come from? The most watched programme on the BBC in 2025 so far was the England Women's Euro final victory, which drew a peak live audience of 12.2 million people. Celebrity Traitors achieving just shy of 12 million. And I think that rather backs up our argument this morning. Some of the sport fantastic, some of the drama, some of those shows brilliant. We are talking about the news cycle. We're talking about the news output. Is it impartial? Personally, I think not. Is it institutionally biased? Absolutely. Jamie's in Leeds. Morning, Jez. With regards to Tim Davie, the BBC standing down due to pressure from the government, makes me wonder how far-reaching this government is and where else this government has intervened. Sarah, yeah. Will Tim Davie now be given a knighthood by the Prime Minister now that he's qualified by failing completely and disappearing and going upwards? Good. Martin's in County Durham, man. Where did that come from? Did Hugh Edwards ever pay that 200 grand odd back? Just asking for a friend. No, Martin, of course he didn't. And he's still getting a pension. Brian Goodwin, can you see the comparison between the BBC and the Labour Party, Jez? Crisis after crisis. Surely the next person to go will be Starmer. Duncan's making me laugh. He's in Hampshire. In response to the migrant helpline, this is a breaking news story that we told you that the government is spending £120 million on creating a migrant helpline, which will help migrants to work out how to use their kettle, change a plug, get a newspaper. You think I'm jesting? I'm not. He says I'm a 51-year-old self-employed exterior growth expert. I'm actually a bleeding gardener. He said I work 6 days a week to pay all my bills and never take advantage of anything from the state. My van was broken into at the beginning of the year, Jez, only to be told by the police the rain would have washed away any fingerprints. Brilliant. My van doesn't leak. I tried to book an appointment with my local GP and the earliest I can get is 8 weeks away. On a positive note, my kettle does work, so I don't need that migrant health line. Brilliant. Oh, Stephen Wilkes says, to answer all the existing problems at the BBC, we need a man who knows TV, has been highly successful on TV, someone who hates lefties and hates wokeness. Jeremy Clarkson. Brilliant. 0344 499 1000. 9 minutes to 9. It's OK. This is interesting. This is anonymous. I worked at the BBC for over 20 years, not in news, Jez, but in drama. Trust me, the contempt that producers have for anyone who isn't left-wing is utterly astounding. We are all thick Brexit voting gammons to them, scripts to scrutinise for offence, and any transgression from the approved ideology will get you in trouble. Weirdly, he said, it was always my dream to work at the BBC. It's kind of heartbreaking for me that I actually ended up leaving in disgust. That's interesting. Surely the BBC have dragged the government into an hilariously embarrassing situation with Trump. There must be contract clauses that the BBC have broken and have brought shame upon the government by the state broadcaster. I would absolutely stick with what Nadine Dorries said. I think it's really frightening. The people who will still stick up for the BBC will say this is all Trump. No, it's not. It's because your news output is biased and not right. To another break. Loads to get on. We're going to speak to Rebecca Ryan, who has been behind a campaign to defund the BBC for as long as you can remember. She's next. Ian, what do you make of Britain, my friend?
All right, Jezza. Ian from Liverpool. I always remember saying to my wife when on that great day last year when Donald Trump won the election again, I said to my missus, I said, there's a saying, I think I'm right in saying this anyway, that when America sneezes, the UK, Europe gets a cold, basically signifying the way the cultural and political sort of winds of change go, you know. And I think we're starting to see it at long last. First of all, the John Lewis advert last week, we're getting back to a bit of normality. I know it's only something small, but all these small things coming together just lead me to believe that things aren't too far away from getting back to normal. Hopefully Farage gets in and we get the Trump effect over here. Anyway, great show, mate. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.
I mean, it is really heartbreaking to see, you know, a gentleman like that when he's talking and reflecting back on his military service and what that means for him now. Of course, it's incredibly moving. You know, I'm a veteran myself. I served in Afghanistan. And when I heard him speaking, I think it really sort of made me reflect on my own service in Afghanistan. And also, I was kind of thinking, obviously, he spoke a little bit about why he has the feelings that he does now. But I was also just reflecting on what kind of things made me feel the same way as well.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. That main news story, Tim Davie and Deborah Turness, head executives at the BBC, have resigned. The Lovies are saying it's all Donald Trump. The rest of us are saying no, it's because your news is institutionally biased and not impartial. We say a very good morning to a lady who's fought a campaign for a long time, Rebecca Ryan, campaign director for Defund the BBC, with a spring in her step and a smile on her face. Rebecca, good morning. How are you?
Jeremy, great show this morning.
Thank you. What's your response to this news overnight, apart from, like me, you're grinning from ear to ear?
I mean, the thing is with these two resigning, it's not an indication of accountability. This is just an indication of institutional collapse. The BBC is in an absolute mess. And they're just hoping that by throwing sort of some red meat, that people will calm down and go, oh, OK, that's enough. But no, the BBC has shown itself to be a propaganda unit, essentially. You know, it's been splicing together bits of footage to tell a story against, our interfering in the democratic process of our closest ally. This is an absolute outrage. And then, we've seen, they've been anti-women, they are anti-Israel, they are the sort of, it's been shown that they are picking these sort of dinner party conversations of the sort of metropolitan elite, and they're pushing this agenda through. And they've got themselves in an absolute tangle of all this wokeism that they have been trying to push and force on people. And the thing that really frustrates people is that it's British people who are forced to pay for this. If they watch any kind of live broadcast TV at all or BBC iPlayer, they're being bullied into paying the BBC to carry this out. And that's just not acceptable.
I couldn't agree more. And a couple of politicians have made the point that there are good sports programmes, good dramas, Strictly Traitors. It is the BBC News, it's BBC Verified, it's BBC Arabic, the BBC Asian Network. The fact of the matter is they admit today to deceptive editing. I think you're right, I don't think Davie and Turness are enough. I think this needs to go higher, and I think there need to be prosecutions. And of course, you'll agree with this, the Lovies who will protect themselves will say this is all Donald Trump. Yeah, sure, he probably has had an impact, but at the end of the day, the BBC, the British people, I would suspect in a majority, are fed up to the back teeth that the BBC is not on a level playing field with everybody else, proving through the quality of their output that we want to subscribe. They get this figure, thank you, Christian. The total income the BBC received last year was £5.39 billion. That's a quarter of Rachel Thieves' black hole, for God's sake. And what do they do with that? Justify their own existence. I haven't got long, but do you think they should be defunded, Catherine?
Rebecca, yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, well done, Jez. It's an early day. Yes, there we go. Good.
Of course, if they should be defunded, and it should be voluntary for people to pay for the BBC. And the BBC are always saying, how essential they are and how much of a great readership, viewership and readership they have, and a global soft power. In that case, let them pay for it. If those people want to watch it and want to listen to this wokeism and have this agenda pushed down their throats, then let them pay for it. But the rest of us who don't want to watch the BBC but like watching live sport, for example, then they shouldn't have to pay the BBC. There needs to be accountability, and these two people resigning isn't going to, deliver any kind of accountability. Nobody thinks it is. And so the government, and we don't have much faith that this government is going to do anything about it, because we can see the mess that Lisa Nandy herself is in. It's just disaster after disaster for both the BBC and the Labour government. But certainly some government coming up soon needs to get rid of the licence fee.
Rebecca, I'm very sorry for calling you Catherine. Thank you so much indeed. Rebecca Ryan, defund the BBC. Well, for many, the next Prime Minister could be Nigel Farage. Would he defund the BBC? You will find out live and exclusive on Talk's Morning Glory. It's next, after the news at 9.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the Channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Morning and welcome back to the final hour of Morning Glory ahead of Julia Hartley-Brewer's return to Talk. What is it, 3 minutes past 9? You're waking up soon if you are waking up, where have you been? The main news story today, Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, has resigned overnight, as has Deborah Turness. Many of you won't know her. She came from ITV to be the BBC's head of news 3 years ago. Many people are saying that the fact these two have fallen on their sword over the deceptive editing of Donald Trump's speech is the right move. Several of you are saying it goes higher. Most of you are saying this had to be done. It is institutionally biased, the news. It is not impartial, the news. They seem to have employed a bunch of liberal lefties who have their own agenda. Let's just replay, because I think it's really important to take stock every now and then. A Panorama programme played what they said was Donald Trump's speech after those Capitol riots. You'll hear that first. If you haven't heard this, where have you been? You'll also then hear what he actually said. And let me point out, so bad was his editing, what he said was 52 minutes apart. And the reason that this has caused Tim Davie to resign and Deborah Turness is because this is supposed to be our state broadcaster. They are supposed to be straight down the line. Blatantly, they haven't been. Have a listen.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
I don't care who you are, I think it's disgusting. The interesting thing is the Donald overnight on Truth Social, and I quote, said the top people in the BBC, including Tim Davie, the boss, are all quitting / fired because they were caught doctoring my very good, in brackets, perfect speech of January the 6th. Thank you to the Telegraph for exposing these corrupt journalists. These are very dishonest people who tried to step on the scales of a presidential election. On top of everything else, they're from a foreign country, one that many consider our #1 ally. What a terrible thing for democracy. Now, in the last hour and a half, we exclusively revealed on Morning Glory, who'd have thought I had a source inside the BBC, but this is a fact, verified by The Sun, actually. They told us that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Trump happy. Now, whilst we all sit here and go, he's gone, there's been so many scandals. Think about it. Hugh Edwards, the paedophile still getting his pension. Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace, Bob Villan. Let's slag off Jews whilst the Director General knows. Martin Croxall, right? That journalist, that broadcaster who dared to change pregnant people to pregnant women. She got absolutely slaughtered. What about the Hamas documentary? Turns out to be voiced by a Hamas official's son, and we're paying for that. Lots of reasons why people are angry, but Nadine Dorries nailed it for me. The lefties, the Liberals, will now say the only reason Davies stepped down is because Trump. This is far right. This is outrageous. No, the reason Tim Davie has had to step down, my friends, is surely because he oversees an organisation that is institutionally biased and is not impartial. We say a very good morning to the only lefty I allow because he's the most sensible one, former Labour advisor, underlined former, Matthew Torbit. Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, everybody says there's a spring in your step this morning, Kyle. This is long overdue, isn't it, Tim Davie?
I think if you're going to be Director General at the BBC, you're not really supposed to be a household name. People in the business, such as yourself and others, may know who he is, may have dealt with him before. You shouldn't really be in most people's living rooms, people knowing who you are, and that's all because of the wrong reasons, as we've seen from even in the recent months of Glastonbury onwards, the fact that he was present whilst these chants were going on, didn't make the decision to take it off air, in fact just sat there and didn't do anything, it seems. And it's not good, you know. The BBC's never not been non-biased. They do a good job at it. People on the left will moan that there are plenty of Tory shills, certainly in presenter roles, that you know, have their own agenda. I always found it very surreal. I had a lot of respect, actually, for Andrew Neil, but I found it bizarre that you could, you know, edit The Spectator as a total conservative magazine, but also hold a but he was very good at interviewing everybody, so I didn't mind necessarily. There are also those on the right that feel more the producers and behind-the-scenes sort of stuff is a lot more liberal and people have agendas. I think the thing that's annoyed me with this is if you had an MO that you wanted to get Trump or this is good viewership or whatever, there's plenty of stuff you could have gone on from January the 6th without doctoring footage and splicing footage together. You had leaked texts from Mike Pence on the day of clearly him not wanting to ratify these results. You had him not calling for people to call it quits until an hour afterwards. All sorts of books and all sorts have been written. You could have interviewed the authors, all this sort of stuff. And all it's done is lead people to feel very distrustful in an era where people are very distrustful of the media in general. And the sad thing is the BBC, in my book, is the sort of ones that you would turn to for the big occasions, whether it be the death of the Queen, the World Cup final, all this sort of stuff.
Read by Hugh Edwards. This is exactly my point. And Nigel Farage, who'll be on this show, we're just having some communication problems, has tweeted already this morning and said this is the last chance for the BBC. It's time for change. Richard Tice was on earlier, Andrew Griffiths was on earlier, all saying the same thing. There is a difference between an institution. I'm old. I'm your dad's age, right? In the old days, we would go there for everything. The Queen's death, the announcement of the Gulf War, all those things that you lot are going, what? How long ago was that? news has changed, the whole landscape has changed. And for many now, when you see such bias output, you question whether it is fair, right or proper for this massive organisation to take £5.39 billion a year, not be justifiable because of its charter to anybody who's democratically elected. Almost, you're going to hate this, like the EU, just everybody with their noses in the trough, self-perpetuating their own importance and actually not doing the job. And all of them this morning have said, difference between programming, right? Most popular programme on the BBC last year, the Women's Euro Finals, 12.2 million, brilliant. The news, I think they need to be separated, and I think the news is not impartial, and I think it is high time that somebody said, I don't know how it happens, we need to change this, because if right now, Matt, you asked people to subscribe to the BBC, I very much suspect they would be in trouble financially. I really do.
Yeah, because people's viewing habits have changed. We saw this year that YouTube was second to only the BBC when it comes to where people get their news. Certainly you move down younger the generations, it's mostly TikTok. That is exactly where people go to, as well as YouTube. So I think it will change, and I've always believed that scheduled programming will change, and it will be more maybe an iPlayer-y type Netflix thing, bar the things such as the football that has a set time, and that may be then on, and maybe you still have the 6 and the 10 or whatever that'll die a death. I do, for me anyway, it's still Manchester terror attack 2017. My mate was staying opposite, he rang me, something's happened. The first thing I thought was, I'm going to put the BBC on.
Yep.
I saw lots of stuff on social media, but because you can't verify that, I still wouldn't trust that information unless, you know, Croxall said it.
But
or
isn't it
whoever
really
was on at
interesting?
the
I'm
time.
60, and if I had to be, before I started here, in the last few years, I'd have gone to Sky first and foremost. I genuinely would. Somehow, I don't know. But talk about the scandals before. Hugh Edwards, understandably grates with millions of people. He is still getting, that paedophile, he should be in prison, a pension from the BBC. When I see Tim Davies saying, well, we haven't actually got his 200 grand back yet, you should be moving heaven and earth to hard-working people want to know why that man can get away with looking at pictures of young kids and still have his pockets being lined. Wallace, Bob Villan, you brought it up. Tim Davies was at Glastonbury for 5 hours, allowing that to be streamed. Whatever your views of the Middle East crisis, he was basically allowed on the BBC for 5 hours to say, let's kill Jews. And utterly unfair. Did you read the story this morning that 200 journalists are at war in the newsroom because of Martin Croxall? The Anti-Semitic Society have complained to the BBC because apparently they have to change 2 stories a week on Gaza. To me, your point is very relevant. There seems to be an ideology, and that ideology has taken over something that we all used to believe in. And I don't believe it anymore, and I don't believe that millions of people do. And I think it's sad, and it does need to change. But will it? Can it?
I think the BBC is like any big corporation, big establishment, whatever you want to call it. Unfortunately, when you have big stars, your Savills, your Hugh Edwards, I think even Rolf Harris really for a period with the whole Animal Hospital and whatever he was doing on there, they will move heaven and earth actually, not to get the pension back, but we can't let this get out. We've got to cover this up. And it obviously was covered up in many cases.
Cover up these.
I agree. And what you should be doing to gain or regain public trust is moving heaven and earth. Get the solicitors in. You've got to get that money back. That's
what I mean.
Horrible.
What a look. What an awful look.
Yeah, but no, I don't want to cast aspersions on how pally people were with one another and whether you just sort of want to, you know, brush it. But it's like anything. You have it at universities, you have it in the media, you have it in politics, you have it in any elite institution. They don't want these sort of figures coming out because they'd rather cover it up than go, we've got a problem. Maybe we should deal with the problem.
But you see, it's like the one that annoyed me at the
problem.
weekend was that bloody Nick Robinson on the Today programme, and he came out and he said, we're a massive, huge organisation and mistakes are going to happen, but, you know, anybody who dares to question the veracity and the importance of the BBC's news output is a far-right thug. Really?
Is that what he said? Sorry.
Yes, backed up by John Simpson. You're all far right if you dare to criticise our output. Now, I don't get frustrated for a reason. I admit I used to watch the BBC as a kid growing up. What seems to be so wrong is all of us, newspapers, television, radio, you only survive if you have viewers who buy your advertising products and the people who advertise, and that's it. And you know that from the real world. To me, that's called the real world. If the BBC is given £5.39 billion a year, does that not breed I don't give a toss. I'll do exactly what I want. That is the issue. Nadine Dorris said to me, as Culture Secretary, because of the Royal Charter, she can do nothing. She froze the licence fee for 2 years, and she got more crap, she said, from her own party than she did from the opposition parties, because everybody's terrified. And some of the institutions in this country, you look at the NHS, to me, they're sort of, untouchable. No, this is wrong. I think, as a national broadcaster, and I think now is the time that change has to happen.
I think the thing that is also as annoying, and whether that does breed I'll do what I want, was someone I spoke to over the weekend who'd spoken to a senior person at the BBC many moons ago at Wimbledon or one of these sorts of events, and they said they're not worried about money that they might bring on whoever else, because they'll always have the licence fee.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've got to cut your cloth accordingly, though, as well. And when we look at things like government waste and local authority waste, and something that's very much on the agenda at the moment, if we're paying hand over fist, essentially, of another tax, really, is what it is, you want to make sure you're getting bang for your buck and the best sort of output. Now, listen, there's lots of good stuff that it does. Listen, for celebrity traitors, I'd pay the licence fee alone. Me, just I've really loved it. However,
I turned it down. Can you believe that?
And I do still think this summer they'll still have the best football coverage at the World Cup, Gary Lineker or no Gary Lineker. They will have the best coverage. But I think with stuff like this, it's incredibly important. You want it to be right.
Now, we've agreed on this. We're going to disagree. It's 9:15. Keep your calls coming. Just very quickly. We learned this morning that asylum seekers is the Labour Party's idea to get rid of people in taxpayers' asylum hotels. We give £100 to leave. Go and stay with your family or some friends. £100. What about, no, we're not giving you £100. We're not putting you in the hotel in the first place. You're going to be deported, or you're not coming in if you're an illegal migrant.
Short term, I can sort of get it. It's cheap, get them out of the way, whatever. Long term, you've got to change the legislation. You've got to stop people coming here in the first place. This is what's going to kill you at the next election. Talking of moving heaven and earth, this is going to be the key thing, and it's going to be very hard, very complicated, but you're in government, you've got to get it done. You've got a massive majority as well.
Great to have you on, Matt. Matthew Talbot, the only lefty I'll allow on the show. Thank you very much indeed. Very quickly, Brian says Nigel Farage is a very clever man. He will only be too aware that he announces he will defund the BBC. He gets the keys to number 10. The BBC, if he does that, the BBC between now and the general election will do everything in their power to discredit and disrupt the Reform Party campaign to protect their privileged position. Unfortunately, he is the only MP prepared to say what we all want, to scrap the BBC. We say a very good morning to the leader of Reform. Nigel, how are you? Nigel Farage.
Good morning. Pleased to join you.
Lovely to have you on, my friend. You've tweeted already saying this is really the last chance for the BBC and it's time to change. You'll understand the outpouring, Nigel, this morning of people saying this is outrageous, it's been scandal after scandal. Many people as well on the left saying this is all about Trump. Trump has caused this. We talked about sources inside the BBC earlier to us saying that the government lent on Tim Davie. A really unsavoury position for our national broadcaster, Nigel, that quite rightly we can say is no longer impartial, and there is institutional bias, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, Trump is just really the final straw, isn't it? And by the way, I mean, I did speak to the president on Friday, and I can't even tell you how angry he was. As he said, is this how you treat allies? I mean, it's a very strong point. It's a very strong point, isn't it? I mean, without America, we are basically defenceless, and to be stitched up by our national broadcaster, really, he was very, very angry. But look, this isn't just about Trump, whatever Ed Davey says. I mean, I remember the Wilson report 20 years ago, where the BBC admitted that their coverage of the European Union and immigration had not been impartial. And we go through the years and we look at climate change, we look at net zero, we look at what they put out from Hamas about what's happening in Gaza. On issue after issue after issue, you see deep, inbuilt bias. Now, I think because the BBC is drawn from such a narrow segment of society, they're so biased they don't even know they're biased just because of the type of people that make it up. So look, I think, look at the numbers. 500,000 people last year stopped paying the licence fee. 500,000 people the year before stopped paying the licence fee. And I really think the institution is in the last chance saloon. It needs a bold, brave, new Director General to come in, somebody with experience of turning around the culture of an organisation, because that's the problem here. It's deeply cultural. And someone with the courage to say that the BBC in the modern world doesn't need to do entertainment. The BBC in the modern world doesn't need to do sport. All of that can be on subscription, and they can compete against online services, ITV, you name it.
Yeah.
Does the BBC have a global role for Britain that's important? You bet your life it does. But that, of course, is paid for with a Foreign Office. And I do think the BBC World Service matters. So the BBC should be pared back to just doing news at local and national level, given a chance to do it impartially, but literally that's the last chance saloon. And the idea that we should all be paying £181 a year, which is the new proposal, no, that's for the birds. This current subscription model is completely outdated. It has to go. Let's have a slimmed-down BBC doing a very basic job and doing it well. And if it can't do that, it will have to go altogether.
Well, I was going to ask you, many people will say, Nigel, that, you know, reform, what is it, 151 polls, you're in the lead, you know, you're going to be fast-tracked to number 10. If that didn't happen, if that change failed to materialise, is there a point in the future where you would make a decision as Prime Minister of this country to defund the BBC?
Well, I mean, I'm going to defund the BBC from its current model, be in no doubt about that. You know, the BBC, under our plans, would be slimmed down to something very relatively small, but most of it would move to a subscription model and compete in the open market. You know, do I want it to have a basic role for news and current affairs? Yes, but it's going to have to be very, very different to the way it is now.
It's excellent to hear. You've got a couple of minutes, I hope, my friend. If not, you tell me, but I'd like to throw something else at you this morning. I just throw at everybody all morning. This Labour government, which is sort of careering from disaster to disaster, two latest things today. This morning, their latest idea to do with asylum seekers being got out of hotels, so we're not paying £8 trillion a day, is to give those asylum seekers, Nigel Farage, £100 a week to leave the hotels. These are plans being considered by ministers who are saying things like, well, we'll give you £100 a week and you go and live with a family member or indeed a friend, to which I say, if they had a family member or a friend in the first instance, why didn't they go there before the hotel? But more importantly, shouldn't we be spending that ridiculous money on deporting these people or working out a system whereby they're not allowed in this country in the first place?
Yeah, we shouldn't be debating hotels. We shouldn't be debating houses of multiple occupancy. We shouldn't be debating chucking money in their pockets to go and find their own rental accommodation. We shouldn't even be debating this. No one that comes via this route should be allowed to stay. And I thought the supreme irony yesterday, as right across the country, thousands of services took place at 11 a.m. with a 2-minute silence to remember all those who've been lost, most of them defending our country against being invaded. And at that very moment of 11 o'clock yesterday morning, hundreds of young, undocumented males of fighting age were crossing the English Channel.
Do you know, I'm so glad you brought that up, and I hope you've got, it's not long, but there was an interview the other day on Good Morning Britain, which it really, really got me. And I was talking to Denny, our boss, earlier, and I was saying that he was saying he'd been to a Remembrance Sunday thing in his village, and it was more popular than ever, Nigel. And my son, Oliver, the young one, was holding he's in the Cubs, and he was holding the flag yesterday, and I went down, and there were hundreds. And I saw this interview last week on GMB. I just, very quickly for you, this is Alex Penstone, ladies and gentlemen, and my takeaway from this is, how sad is this interview? Have a watch.
My message is, I can see in my mind's eye there was rows and rows of white stones of all the hundreds of my friends and everybody else that gave their lives for what? The country of today. No, I'm sorry. The sacrifice wasn't worth the result that it is now.
Breaks my heart, Nigel Farage, that. I spend time sat here listening to people arguing the toss about things every single day, whether a woman can have a this or... And you think of him and his mates. I wish we could ingrain that in this entitled generation. Sorry, maybe that's old-fashioned.
No, well, I've been involved with World War II and indeed going back World War I veterans organisations for many, many years. Indeed, I was with a sprightly 99-year-old Royal Scot veteran yesterday. So I've spent a lot of time talking to that generation and indeed the one before. And let me tell you, Alec Penstone is far from being on his own. They look at what's happened to the breakdown in our society. They look at what's happened to the country, and they are very, very sad indeed about it. And what I thought was most interesting was the reaction of the presenters. That was not what they wanted to hear, was it?
No, mate. Well, we both know ITV. Listen, so grateful for your time. We know how busy you are. Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed for joining us, Leader of Reform UK and MP for Clacton. I'll bring my lefty back in. You and I probably wouldn't agree on an awful lot politically. We're mates, though. I'm going to say something that probably sounds a bit strange. Do you not think in this mess that is our political arena today, he sounds more prime ministerial by the day? Nigel Farage. Because I do. Ooh.
He's changed. I don't know, but prime ministerial...
What do you mean he's changed?
I think he's had to focus. I've always had a theory, and I don't think it's quite changed. I don't think he really wants the job. I think there's an element of fear, because it's a hell of a job to take on in this current climate. I don't know many people that would want the job.
I think he's probably not. I don't want to just disagree out of sort. I think he appears to be, and I believe is the only person who could either deal with that fear or is prepared to deal with that fear. I think he's. I'm not saying he's fearless. Nobody is, but I certainly believe that he has in his head the ability to take all comers on. But of course, I mean, it never ceases to amaze me. Christian and I were talking about this the other day. It was 16 months ago when Keir Starlin walked into Downing Street with 100, the biggest majority since the beginning of time. He's a dead man walking after what, 70 weeks? I mean, it's extraordinary.
Cholera is more popular than
Sorry, can we take that up? Christian, you're not listening. He's literally just said, Matthew Talbot, that cholera is more impressive than...
But I think the thing for Nigel or anyone else, I don't think whoever is the next Prime Minister will succeed, because the economic mess that will be worse than what Labour inherited, I have no doubt it will be a worse situation. The entanglement of immigration law in this country, so if he's going to put that front and centre the way Labour have put front and centre, we're not going to tax people knowing damn well they'll have to, he's going to struggle if he doesn't succeed at that. And I just think it harms his, I suppose, his reputation. For his supporters, it would be easier for him to go down as the best Prime Minister we never had, and the establishment threw everything at me, and therefore they locked me out, and this progressive alliance came together, and all that sort of stuff.
Don't you think there's something to be said, though, for standing in front of the British people and saying, right, and I've said it for ages, this is what I believe in. If you vote for me, I will take you on this journey, good or bad. There will be days when we succeed and days when they fail, but I will point out all of that. I'm a human being who makes mistakes. This is what I'm going to do. I think the British people would buy that right now. I think the British people would go, to be fair, he's been screwed there, or he's made a mistake there. I think this belief that politicians present themselves as perfect picture cards, and it doesn't work like that. You're right. Financially, we're screwed. Morally, we seem to be screwed. Internationally, we seem to be. I mean, there's so much wrong. You could argue it completely, flip it and say, if you're 100% in the mire, even if he improved things by 20%, wouldn't that go down as a success story?
It's about feeling. People have got to feel better, either within themselves or within their pockets, and at the moment people don't. Whether they will in the future, I don't know. And the other thing that I used to warn about in opposition is we could do all the right things in the world, and we haven't. But if we had, there's other variables you can't control. Ministers involved in all sorts of scandals. Not necessarily Starmer's fault, it's morons on the front bench.
Well, no, I'm going to argue with you there, and you're going to hate me.
No,
Louise Haigh, the first one he had to get rid of, was a known convicted felon.
But
Transport Secretary.
Whether he's even across, yes, maybe that's on him.
I mean, that's
maybe
not a great
that's
example,
on him.
Is it?
No, but you've got Russian Hour Ali.
What about Tulip Sadiq, his best mate, being done by the Bangladeshi authorities? He must have known that. He spent many an evening drinking with her.
I know, and I suppose all you can do is take people on good faith if they say. But what about, you've got Israel, you've got Palestine, you've got Ukraine, you've got this to deal with as well, unfortunately. And that's the stuff you can't control. I used to think Russia would be the one for us. It's actually turned out to be Israel-Palestine.
That's true. It's great to have you. Will he come back next week?
Yeah.
Bless him, he's just got off a plane. I'm not asking him from where. 9:29, this is Morning Glory. Shut up. See you in 3.
probably like you, Peter, and many thousands and thousands of others, every year at this time, I remember two relations, of course, that I never met. My great uncle, who was killed in the First World War, and my uncle, who was killed in the Second World War a few weeks after D-Day. So it marks an occasion when I think about them particularly, and it is wonderful to do so.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just gone 9:30. Julia Hartley-Brewer is on from 10 on Talk. We want to take your calls. 0344 499 1000. Your text to 87222. Jezza, Damon from Wigan. I'm a veteran. Served in the army during the 90s, and I'm so proud to have served and defended my country. However, a lot of people in Britain don't have respect for Remembrance Day anymore. And a veteran asked me yesterday if I would serve again. The answer, I'm afraid, is no. I wouldn't, because Britain has changed so much. It's not the place I wanted it to be. Jeff says, how could we expect the BBC to have high standards when the idiot in charge, or used to be in charge, wore white trainers with a suit? Very interesting. And David from Watford. Yesterday I was there helping close the roads for the Remembrance Parade at the small village for Remembrance Service at the War Memorial. There were so many more people than the last few years. It's lovely to make us feel proud to be British. Really, really important. Finally, quickly, Jen. Morning, Jez. I've tried to stop paying my licence fee, but then I've been scared back into it by threatening letters. I must have cancelled my direct debit a number of times, but threats of court action and fines have forced me to continue paying. If I turn the TV on, I have to pay. You could, of course, just concentrate on Talk and download the app, which needs to be done before the 1st of December. How about that for just seamless promotion, Ricky? You'll be proud of me. The Talk app is fantastic. Download it on your mobile phone. Don't know how to, but it's there on the screen. Do it before Monday the 1st of December, and everything. You won't have to pay any licence fee at all. You'll be able to watch, listen, is that right? Yeah. On your phone, which means you won't have to pay your licence fee. 9:35. Now, the news of Tim Davie was met with joyous happiness with many people around here, and many left-wing journalists. Oh my God, this is outrageous. And of course, the news that we broke on this show, sources at the BBC told Morning Glory 2 hours ago that the government lent on Tim Davie to resign in order to keep Donald Trump happy. You'll know that the BBC has admitted to deceptive editing of the speech he made after the Capitol riots January 4 years ago. Only last week, Caroline Levitt, the press secretary, was pretty scathing in her criticism of the BBC. Have a watch, have a listen.
The administration is aware of those reports, and we are currently looking into the veracity of them because, unfortunately, unlike some in the media, we don't take the word of Hamas with total truth. We like to look into it when they speak. Unlike the BBC, who had multiple headlines. They wrote, Israeli tank kills 26, Israeli tank kills 21, Israeli gunfire kills 31, Red Cross says 21 people were killed in an aid incident, and then, oh wait, they had to correct and take down their entire story, saying we reviewed the footage and couldn't find any evidence of anything. Oh. Okay, so we're going to look into reports before we confirm them from this podium or before we take action, and I suggest that journalists who actually care about truth do the same to reduce the amount of misinformation that's going around the globe on this front.
God, we could do with somebody that forceful in this country. LaDonna Harvey is a host of Kojo San Diego. Welcome to Morning Glory. Again, there you are in your dressing room. How are you?
I know. It's all I have. I'm great. How are you?
Well, I'm all right. We're celebrating. Well, some of us are celebrating that the rather useless head of the BBC has had to resign overnight. But what's frustrating many on this side of the pond is Donald, quoted on Truth Social saying, you know, this was fake news, and they've admitted that. But a lot of people who would support the BBC, what I'd call the lefties here, are going to use Donald Trump as an excuse and say, this is just him, he's now controlling the United Kingdom, this is outrageous, this is wrong. There are fundamental problems with the BBC. But it has to be said, not much happiness in the White House when this happened, was there?
No, there wasn't. And I mean, so when you're a journalist, and I've been a journalist for many, many years, when you are going to edit something, you have got to be so careful. That you're editing for something to be concise is fine, but you cannot edit major parts of what something, you know, of a piece of what somebody says, take it out and change the entire context of what it is that they've said and done. That is not journalism. And that's not editing for anything other than to make a point that you're trying to make. And that's not journalism's job. It's not my job to tell you what I think of Donald Trump. That is not my job. It is my job to tell you, here is what happened. These are the facts. You make up your own mind. You're not dumb.
No, and I think that's the issue here, and I'm going to keep banging it out, that there are and were fundamental issues about bias, about, you know, impartiality, obvious to everybody, but it's very interesting to us that only when this is, because, you know, a lot of people say the BBC World Service and the BBC on the international stage has a fantastic role to play and is incredibly popular, blah blah blah. But again, another example of how the United Kingdom is becoming a laughing stock. And there is some irony in the fact that the Donald, who I'd love to have here for 24 hours, can you imagine how much we get done, has been able to enforce this. It's quite interesting also if we look at Donald Trump. You know, we were talking about Nigel Farage just then, and many people in this country, I think the last 150 polls say that Nigel Farage could be the next Prime Minister. And a lot of people say in this country you're hamstrung and it's difficult to make decisions. Donald Trump was told that, but he's changed America immeasurably in the last year, hasn't he?
Well, I think that anybody who says politics is easy hasn't been involved in politics, but things can get done. Donald Trump has managed to create a kind of a cult of personality that allows him to do things that other presidents have not. He says things that other presidents haven't. People to have support him who say, you know, we need somebody like this because talking around these issues has not solved these issues. He is an interesting case study in everything that I thought was political is now up in the air, and it's a marvel to watch.
It's very interesting to watch from afar because you sort of get the distinct feeling that he says things to garner a reaction or wind people up and then dives in. And you talk, you know, people were saying to me about tariffs. The fact of the matter is, if you can say to your country, right, I'm going to make us more prosperous. I might upset a few neighbours and hack a few people off. You'd go, yeah, that's good for the finances. If you say to a country that's got issues with immigration as we do, and I keep throwing these figures out there, right, there's a whole bunch of people in America who hate the ICE phenomenon, they hate the way it's been done. But a majority of people are no doubt looking at the southern border and saying 400,000 arrived a year ago, 400 last 3 months, and he's doing the job. And I guess what you learn from that, LaDonna, is that actually when you make big decisions, it's not going to please all the people all the time. And the politicians that work in, like, you think of Thatcher, you think of Reagan, you think even of Blair, are not always popular. But I think too many politicians across the globe nowadays are so worried about what a focus group might say about what their actions might. Just do it from your heart and live with the consequences, right?
Well, they don't want to live with the consequences because we have now a political class. We have a group of politicians. I mean, we just heard that Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, is not going to run for re-election. Well, she's only been there 45 years, which is far too long to be in politics. And they get entrenched and they, you know, it's always about how do I get elected the next time? How do I get my next job in politics? You know, moving up the ladder are or staying where they are. And that means that nothing gets solved because you have to have a problem in order to run on the problem, don't you?
I couldn't agree more. And we love having you on. Let's make it a weekly thing. We love the dressing room. We love San Diego. It's a very nice place. Thank you very much indeed. LaDonna Harvey talking there about the impact. Donald Trump posting on social saying the BBC were liars, it was fake. That was admitted last night. Tim Davie and Deborah Furness resigning. The lefties are going, yeah, well, you know the truth? This is all Donald Trump. He's an absolute nightmare. I would say, and I've been repeating all morning, it is time that the BBC took a long, hard look in the mirror. Institutional bias, absolutely. Impartial, no. They should be forced, I think, and I agree with Farage, I agree with actually what Andrew Griffith said earlier. The news is a separate entity. The sports programmes. The Lionesses winning was the most popular programme on the BBC this year, 12.2 million. You think traitors, you think Strictly, fine. Make that subscription service based, and I'm sure they would make money. But to give an organisation £5.39 billion a year, that I just think trades an ideology that a majority of people in this country find completely bizarre is fundamentally wrong. What do you make of it? 0344 499 1000. Back in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8:45 on Morning Glory. Julia Hartley-Brewer is here from 10 o'clock. Ian Collins from 1. Talk, of course, where the nation can talk. More of you listening than ever before, and we appreciate and thank you so much for that. The main news story today is all about the BBC. Donald Trump slamming the BBC Director General, well, the one that's going, Tim Davie, last night, saying that the deceptive editing of his speech was a complete disgrace. Many people today jumping on the bandwagon and saying, "Come on, this isn't right, man. You need to really, do more than this. This is an institution that is flawed." Here's a man. Oh, this man's a legend. Did one of the most popular BBC television programmes, That's Life, for more years than I can possibly remember. Always feels that he's put on here to defend the BBC. I've been waiting all morning. Adrian Mills, welcome to Morning Glory.
Oh, BBC bashing round 10. Here we go, Jeremy.
No, not at all, kidder. I was just going to put a couple of things to you. Last night, Davey goes, Deborah Furness goes. Lots of people this morning, and Nigel Farage tweeted actually, not let's defund the whole thing, last chance saloon. We talk about the European football women's thing, 12.2 million. We talk about celebrity traitors, which I know you turned down, and also Strictly, which you turned down because you in spandex will be ludicrous. But it strikes me that the big frustration is that on the one hand, you've got good programmes which should be allowed to survive or fail on a subscription-based service like the rest of us, and that's me being honest. But you've also got this news output, our state broadcaster, Adi, right, which we would all hope and believe should be impartial, there shouldn't be bias. And whether it's Hugh Edwards or Gary Lineker or Bob Villan or Greg Wallace or Martine Croxall, for God's sake, bless her, you know, daring to say pregnant woman, not pregnant people, and being sanctioned, whether it's the Hamas documentary, the list goes on, and I think it's time to accept that the BBC's news output does not cut to the level of decency and correctness that we expect. I think it's not good enough, mate. I really, really do.
Well, you know, Jeremy, that I constantly try and defend the BBC, even though they haven't employed me for yonks. However, on this occasion, it's almost impossible. What I would say is that everybody at some point would tune to the BBC for a breaking news story that was worldwide, that had, you know, 9/11 and stuff like that. You would go to the BBC. And I always remember being told off when I presented BBC Breakfast Time that, Adrian, we are down the line. You express an opinion. We can't do that. We're not a commercial station. Gave me a really hard time.
You wouldn't work there anymore then, would you? No wonder they haven't employed you, for Christ's sake.
Well, absolutely right. Well, then somebody once said to me, he said, Adrian, remember, with the BBC, get it first, but get it right. We're not Sky News, not wrong for long. Well, I'm afraid those people eating a bit of humble pie, because I suspect the majority of people probably do now tune to something like Sky News for their breaking news, which I think is slightly depressing, but it's inevitable. Things have moved on greatly in years to come. One thing I would say about the Donald Trump speech, by the way, was I right in saying that there's an underlying piece of music in the BBC edit as well? Or did I just imagine that?
Absolutely, and what was played on Panorama, buddy, and what was played, what was really said, were 52 minutes apart. Now, don't get me wrong, there isn't everything about Donald Trump that I agree with or like, but I do think it's really important to make the point that if you are well, they've accepted deceptive editing. That is the first rule of journalism broken, and I do not believe people will say this could go, you know, producers. I think this goes higher. I mean, he said in his statement of leaving, Davey, this is entirely my decision. I remain very thankful to the chair and the board for their unswerving and unanimous support through my entire tenure, including during recent days. I don't think it's good enough. BBC Verify, all of this stuff. It's not good enough, man.
No, Jeremy, I have to say that any programme that we used to make years ago had to be overseen by the producer, the executive producer, the editor, and then somebody from senior management would come in and watch the final edit. This is 20-odd years ago. So the very fact that there's actually it's very quiet about who those people were. But even the editor of that programme, did they not think, hang on a minute, this isn't really journalistic standards. We shouldn't be chopping. Why on earth did the BBC didn't say, and then later on, Donald Trump said, and then you can play that clip, and we all sort of don't...
Because then you stand absolutely... they cannot detract then, as a result of that, from you've got your own agenda, you're not impartial, you are biased, there is a soft left, liberal, wet, whatever you want to call it, ideology, which is permeating through your news output. And as you quite rightly said, when I was growing up, the Beeb was the first thing you went to. The Queen's coronation, the Queen's death, whatever it was, I'm not that old. All of those things has been taken away by management, it seems, who, you know, I was given a figure earlier, £5.39 billion last year in aid, without trying to sound unfair. I've said my point about the good programmes. It's almost as if they've become such a huge monster that until the charter's up, they don't have to answer to government, they don't have to answer to anybody. They have to answer to the licence payer, and I think they are terrified at the thought of going subscription-based, because I think their income would be utterly decimated.
And I suspect, and not often I agree with you on this one, Jeremy, but I suspect you're probably right. And also, many years ago, they weren't as accountable purely by the fact that weren't programmes like Talk, there weren't other people looking at what they were doing, and they could roughshod over a lot of people. I do worry, though, that whatever comes in next, they've got to get it so right. Otherwise, it will be the demise of the BBC. And I don't care what anyone says. The British Broadcasting Corporation, when you travel the world and you mention their name, there is still an awful lot of respect for them.
Not in the White House this morning, but I'll give you your point. We'll just have to keep doing this. You're a good man. We love having you on. Good friend of mine, Adrian Mills, broadcaster, former BBC... oh, look at this. BBC presenter. Jez, cancel the BBC for everyone. Then we could put the fee towards this year's heating bill, says Bill in Hampshire. Hello, Pauline. I've not paid my licence fee for 3 years now, and I'm not going to pay it. I would like to see Trump sue the BBC, and whoever actually doctored his speech, they should be arrested. Loads of you with an opinion. We're getting towards 10 o'clock. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy. Michael here in Warwickshire. Great show. Just wanted to pick up on a point that stuck in my throat back in September when they reported the Unite the Kingdom march, and on the BBC News they were saying, and there were 25 arrests at the far right march. It wasn't a far right march, it was people from all sectors of British society who went down and wanted to show their patriotism. And when you go back a couple of weeks from the September the 13th to the Notting Hill Carnival, and you look at the arrests there, on the bank holiday Monday, there were 223 arrests, but that was not really reported because diversity, of course, is our greatest strength. And it's more a case of reporting on the 25 arrests at the far right march on the 13th of September. So it's a case of... I don't feel it's red or blue anymore. I think it's nationalists versus globalists. That is the issue. And the BBC is now a globalist propaganda news organisation. And that is the big, big issue in my book. Anyway, great show.
You can see in the way he's speaking that he's concerned about where our world is going, both domestically and internationally. But where I would respectfully disagree with him, we do step forward when other nations hesitate. We're not there yet, but as I touched on earlier, the world is getting more dangerous, not less. And we're not moving fast enough to recognize what is coming over the hill. So I hope today is that day of reflection. But I'd also say that whilst we're having our challenges now, they're no different from ones we've had in the past that we've been able to endure.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Julia on the way from 10. Keep your calls coming to her show, 0344 499 1000. Just want to read this. Gaz in Plymouth, frustrated. He says, Jez, I'm a veteran of 15 years. Unfortunately got medically discharged after falling 45 feet and breaking my back. I then had my disability payment stopped because I can read a book by the Tories. And to be fair, I've lost complete faith in the UK. I loved my time in the military, Jez, to the point I would let my kids sign up. Fast forward to today and I wouldn't let them anywhere near the careers office. I'm disgusted with the modern day running of this country. I'm ashamed of what this country has become. It is time, surely, for the politics model of today to be overhauled to a system that works. Let's face it, all the politicians do is argue for point scoring and reasons for not doing good for us, the people who care about so much. Very quickly, final voice note. Perry, good morning.
Do you know what, Jeremy? I think this government we've got hates this country so much. They'd be like a retreating army and do what they call scorched earth, isn't it? When they wreck the whole country because they don't want it falling into the enemy's hands. And I think that's what Labour will do. They will decimate everything to make it as hard as possible for Nigel and Reform when they come into government. And that's just the way they are. They hate this country. They're not for this country. Horrible, nasty people.
There you have it. 2 minutes to 10. A very good morning to the legend that is Julia Hartley.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. It's
Not
a great day. The BBC's on its arse, let's be honest.
I mean, I genuinely, what I find extraordinary this morning is how much they're all completely saying there isn't a problem. There's no institutional problem whatsoever. This is an attack. This is an internal attack. This is people trying to attack us. Guys, this is you.
Do you know what I think is really... I agree that the saddest thing about today is because of the Trump thing, they're all going, Trump's interfering on our politics. He got David. The fact is, it is institutionally biased. It is absolutely not impartial. It is not the go-to news anymore, and it should be... I like what they were all saying today, actually, sweet, which was to separate the programmes that work from the news. The news, you know this better than anybody, as a journalist.
I just find it extraordinary they don't get it. I don't know how much evidence you could put before people and say that maybe you shouldn't be spouting Hamas propaganda or the Brexit derangement syndrome, Trump derangement syndrome.